Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto awakened the golden Sharringan? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Echoes of Gold. The kunai whistled past Naruto's ear, close enough that he felt the air disturbed by its passage. He dropped low, feet skidding across mud as rain pelted the forest around him. 3 more projectiles thudded into the tree trunk behind him, precisely where his head had been a heartbeat earlier. Still as predictable as ever, came the smooth voice from the shadows. Frontal assault, full speed ahead. When will you learn, Naruto? Naruto grinned despite the danger, rainwater streaming down his face. When it stops working, Sasuke. He lunged forward, hands forming seals at a speed that would have been impossible for him just months ago. 2 shadow clones materialized beside him, each moving in perfect synchronization as they charged toward the dark figure perched on a branch 30 feet away. Sasuke's eyes gleamed red in the darkness, Tomo spinning lazily as he tracked each clone's movement. Still not good enough. The fight was merely training, brutal, exhausting training that had them both pushing boundaries, but necessary. 3 years after the 4th Great Ninja War, peace remained fragile. Threats still emerged from the shadows, and Konoha's strongest shinobi couldn't afford complacency. Sasuke's Chidori crackled to life, illuminating the rain-soaked clearing in harsh blue light. The electric technique dispersed Naruto's clones in puffs of smoke, but the real Naruto had already vanished. Below, Sasuke muttered, leaping skyward just as Naruto burst from the earth beneath him. Their training session continued for another hour, neither gaining clear advantage. What had once been a rivalry fueled by hatred had transformed into something different, a brotherhood forged in shared pain and mutual respect. Sasuke had returned to Konoha, if not fully redeemed in everyone's eyes, then at least committed to protecting the village in his own way. When they finally called a halt, both were breathing hard, clothes soaked and muddy. Naruto dropped to the ground, sprawling on his back despite the rain. Kakashi-sensei wants us back tomorrow, Naruto said between breaths. Something about a mission near the Land of Iron. Sasuke nodded, wiping blood from a small cut on his cheek. The border disputes. I heard. You coming this time? Naruto asked, trying to sound casual though they both knew it wasn't a simple question. Sasuke's position in Konoha remained complicated, trusted by some, viewed with suspicion by others. Kakashi suggested I might be useful, Sasuke replied after a pause. Given my history with the samurai there. Naruto snorted. That's one way of putting it. A rare, slight smile crossed Sasuke's face. Better than saying, since you once attacked their leader and started an international incident. They shared a brief laugh that would have seemed impossible years ago. We should head back, Sasuke said, glancing at the darkening sky. Storm's getting worse. As they walked through the forest toward Konoha, Naruto felt a strange pressure behind his EYs. A sensation he'd experienced several times in recent weeks. He blinked rapidly, trying to clear it. You alright? Sasuke asked, noticing his discomfort. Yeah, just tired. Naruto rubbed his temples. Probably pushed too hard with that last Rasengan. Sasuke studied him with narrowed eyes but didn't press. They parted ways at the village gate with a simple nod, their relationship needing no elaborate farewells. Dawn broke over Konoha in gentle orange hues, birds singing from rooftops as shopkeepers opened their businesses for the day. Naruto made his way through increasingly busy streets toward the Hokage Tower, stopping occasionally to greet villagers. Children called his name, and several times he paused to accept their enthusiastic high fives or answer questions about his adventures. The hero worship still felt strange. He'd achieved his dream of recognition, but fame brought its own complications. Naruto. A familiar voice called from behind. He turned to see Sakura jogging toward him, medical pack slung over her shoulder. Her pink hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore the standard flak jacket of a jonin. Morning, Sakura-chan, he greeted with a wave. Heading to the mission briefing. She nodded, falling into step beside him. Just finished hospital rounds. 3 genin teams came back from border patrol with food poisoning. She made a face. Errantly their squad leader thought wild mushrooms would make a good trail ration. Naruto laughed. Bet that was Konohamaru's team. How do you know? Sakura asked, surprised. He's got my old luck, Naruto said with a grin. And my old stomach. Kid could eat anything and usually tried to. They continued toward the tower, conversation flowing easily between them. Their relationship had evolved over the years. Naruto's childhood crush transforming into deep friendship. Sakura had become one of the village's most respected medical nin, her training under Tsunade bearing impressive results. She ran the hospital's emergency response unit and regularly joined high-priority missions where medical expertise might mean the difference between success and failure. Is Sasuke joining us? She asked as they climbed the tower stairs. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei requested him specifically. Sakura's expression grew thoughtful. The Land of Iron mission, then. I'd heard rumors. You know something I don't? Naruto asked. Just hospital gossip. Apparently, there've been unusual chakra disturbances along the northern borders. Symptoms similar to chakra exhaustion, but in civilians with minimal chakra networks. Naruto frowned. Natural phenomenon. That's the leading theory, Sakura replied. But after everything we've seen. She didn't need to finish. After facing Kagaya and witnessing the Fourth Great Ninja War, they'd learned to question natural phenomena. The Hokage's office was already crowded when they arrived. Kakashi sat behind his desk, the Hokage hat conspicuously absent as usual. Shikamaru stood nearby, consulting a map spread across a side table. Sasuke leaned against the wall in the far corner, arms crossed, while Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburame examined documents near the window. Ah, the stragglers arrive, Kakashi said, eye crinkling in what might have been a smile beneath his mask. Now we can begin. We're exactly on time, Sakura protested, checking the clock. Which, by your usual standards, makes you late, Kakashi countered smoothly. Especially you, Naruto. Naruto shrugged good-naturedly. The sixth Hokage might wear the mantle of leadership, but Kaka's high remained Kakashi, chronically late himself but always ready with a quip about others' punctuality. I've called you all here because we have a situation developing in the Land of Iron that requires delicate handling, Kakashi began, his tone shifting to seriousness. 3 weeks ago, samurai patrols began reporting strange occurrences along their northern mountain range. Unexplained lights, Hakra disturbances affecting both people and wildlife, and most concerning, he pushed a photograph across the desk, this. The image showed what appeared to be a crater, perfectly circular, with Saint range symbols carved into the surrounding rock face. At the center stood a stone pillar covered in script none of them recognized. What language is that? Hinata asked, activating her Byakugan to study the markings more closely. Unknown, Kakashi replied. It matches nothing in our archives, nor in the records from Suna, Iwa, or Kumo. Why involve Konoha? Sasuke asked. The samurai aren't typically eager for shinobi interference. Because of these, Kakashi said, producing more photographs. These showed villagers, ordinary people, with strange golden markings spreading across their skin like luminous veins. Civilians in 3 border villages have exhibited these symptoms after exposure to the site. The markings appear temporarily, accompanied by fever and chakra network disruption, then fade within hours. Any fatalities? Sakura asked, professional instincts kicking in. None so far, but the affected area is spreading. General Mifune specifically requested our involvement after our own investigations proved fruitless. Shikamaru stepped forward. Analysis suggests the symbols bear similarities to certain sealing techniques, though nothing we've encountered before. The working theory is that this might be remnants of something predating the Sage of Six Paths era. A heavy silence fell over the room. History from before the Sage was largely mythological, more legend than fact. And our mission? Naruto prompted. Investigate the site, determine if there's an active threat, and neutralize it if possible, Kakashi answered. If not, contain and report back. Under no circumstances are you to attempt to activate any aspect of whatever this is without authorization. He looked pointedly at Naruto, who raised his hands defensively. Hey, I've gotten better about that sort of thing. A collective snort of disbelief rose from the assembled shinobi. You each bring specific skills we need, Kakashi continued. Sakura, your medical expertise may be critical if more civilians are affected. Hinata, your Byakugan could reveal chakra patterns invisible to others. Shino, your insects can monitor a wide area and potentially detect any unusual energy signatures. Sasuke, your Sharingan and knowledge of ancient sealing techniques could prove invaluable. And me? Naruto asked, though he suspected the answer. Kakashi's expression grew more serious. Your unique chakra Chure and experience with the Nine Tails might provide insights. More practically, if this turns out to be something dangerous that needs containing or destroying, your raw power may be our best option. The unspoken implication hung in the air. Naruto was their contingency plan if things went catastrophically wrong. You leave at noon, Kakashi said. Shikamaru has prepared detailed mission packets for each of you. Sasuke will lead, with Shino as second in command. Naruto raised an eyebrow at Sasuke being named leader but made no objection. Despite his complicated history, Sasuke's tactical mind was unmatched, and he had the most experience with ancient sealing techniques. As they filed out of the office with their mission packets, Hinata fell into step beside Naruto. Are you feeling well, Naruto-kun? She asked, her voice soft but no longer carrying the extreme shyness of their younger days. Your chakra seems different. Naruto blinked in surprise. Different how? Hinata hesitated. I noticed during the briefing. There are small fluctuations near your eyes, almost like echoes in your chakra network. Her pale eyes showed genuine concern. It's subtle, but it wasn't there the last time we worked together. Probably nothing, Naruto said, though the pressure behind his eyes chose that moment to intensify briefly. Been training hard lately, Hinata nodded, but her expression remained troubled. Just be careful on this mission. Something about those symbols in the photographs feels wrong. When has be careful ever been my specialty? Naruto joked, trying to lighten the mood. A small smile touched her lips. Fair point. Then I'll just have to be careful enough for both of us. The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard, as it often did. While they'd work together more frequently in recent years, there remained something about Hinata that Naruto found difficult to read, a quiet strength and depth that contrasted with his more straightforward nature. Thanks, Hinata, he said simply. I appreciate it. They parted ways to prepare for the mission, but Naruto found himself dwelling on her words as he packed his gear. The pressure behind his eyes had been increasing in frequency, and twice now he'd caught glimpses of something strange in the mirror, flecks of gold appearing and vanishing in his normally blue irises. He'd dismissed it as tricks of the light or fatigue, but Hinata's observation suggested otherwise. Still, with a mission priority this high, personal concerns would have to wait. The journey to the Land of Iron took 3 days, ing at a steady pace through Fire Country and into the mountainous neutral territory. As they traveled north, temperatures dropped dramatically, forests giving way to rocky terrain and eventually snow-covered peaks. By the final day, they were bundled in cold weather gear, breath fogging in the frigid air. They were met at the border by a samurai escort, 4 stern-faced warriors led by a lieutenant named Kosuke, who remembered Sasuke all too well from the 5-Cage Summit incident years before. Uchiha, the lieutenant acknowledged stiffly. General Mifune extends his welcome, despite past events. Sasuke merely nodded, neither apologizing nor showing discomfort at the cold reception. We appreciate the Land of Iron's cooperation, Shino said, stepping forward diplomatically. Our mission benefits both our peoples. The tension eased slightly as they followed the samurai through mountain passes toward the Three Wolves, the mountain range that housed the samurai's stronghold. However, they were not headed to the fortress itself but to a research outpost established near the anomaly site. The affected area has grown, Lieutenant Kosuke informed them as they traveled. What began as a single crater now spans nearly a kilometer in diameter. Strange phenomena occur with increasing frequency, lights in the sky, sudden temperature changes, wildlife behaving abnormally. And the civilians with the golden markings? Sakura asked. 27 cases documented so far. All recovered within 12 hours, but each new case shows more extensive markings and longer recovery time. Naruto, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the journey, suddenly stopped walking. The others turned to find him staring at something in the distance, expression oddly blank. Naruto, Sasuke called sharply. Naruto blinked, seeming to come back to himself. Sorry, I thought I saw something. What kind of something? Shino pressed. Gold light, like threads in the air, Naruto said, sounding uncertain. Just for a second. Hinata immediately activated her Byakugan, scanning the area. I don't see anything unusual, but... She turned her gaze to Naruto, then frowned. The chakra flew. Situations around your eyes have intensified. Lieutenant Kosuke's hand moved to his sword hilt. Is he affected by the phenomenon? No, Sasuke said firmly, stepping between the samurai and Naruto. He's fine. I am, Naruto insisted, rubbing his temples. Just tired from the journey. Let's keep moving. They continued, but now the others watched Naruto with varying degrees of concern. Sasuke stayed close, observing him with narrowed eyes, while Hinata periodically checked his chakra network with her Byakugan. Sakura moved to walk beside him, medical instincts clearly on alert. Any other symptoms? She asked quietly. Headache, disorientation, just pressure behind my eyes, Naruto admitted. It's been happening on and off for weeks, but it's stronger here. Why didn't you mention this earlier? She hissed, keeping her voice low enough that the samurai wouldn't overhear. Because it wasn't relevant to the mission, he replied. And still might not be. Sakura looked skeptical but didn't argue further. Tell me immediately if it gets worse. The research outpost came into view as they crested a ridge, a collection of prefabricated structures surrounded by a perimeter of samurai guards. Beyond it lay the anomaly site, visible as an unnaturally perfect circle carved into the mountainside, the snow and vegetation cleared away as though by a giant hand. General Mifune himself met them at the outpost entrance, his weathered face grim beneath his helmet. Konoha shinobi, he greeted with a formal bow. Your swift response is appreciated. His gaze lingered on Sasuke momentarily before moving to Naruto, where it softened slightly. Despite the troubled history between samurai and shinobi, Mifune had developed a grudging respect for Naruto during the war. The situation has deteriorated since we sent our request. Mifune continued as he led them into the main building. Two of my men attempted to remove one of the smaller stone fragments for analysis. Both developed the Golden markings within minutes and have been unconscious for 8 hours now, far longer than previous cases. The interior of the building had been converted into a research center and medical facility. Maps and photographs covered the walls, while samurai and a few civilian scientists moved purposefully between workstations. In a cordoned medical area, 2 samurai lay on beds, attended by medics. Even from a distance, the golden lines glowing beneath their skin were visible, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. Sakura immediately moved toward the patients, medical instincts taking over. May I examine them? Mifune nodded. Our medical knowledge is limited compared to shinobi healing techniques. Any insight would be welcome. While Sakura began her examination, Shino's insects dispersed throughout the facility. Gathering information, Sasuke studied the maps and photographs on the walls, Sharringan activated to catch any details others might miss. Hinata used her Byakugan to scan the entire compound and beyond. Toward the anomaly site, the chakra patterns are unlike anything I've seen, she reported. It's as if the very air is saturated with energy, but it's not elemental chakra or natural energy as we understand it. Naruto moved to the window, looking out toward the anomaly. The pressure behind his eyes intensified painfully, and for a brief, disorienting moment, the world seemed to shift. Golden threads appeared in his vision, connecting everything, people, objects, the earth itself, in a complex web that pulsed with life. Naruto. Sasuke's voice seemed to come from very far away. The vision faded, reality reasserting itself. Naruto realized he was gripping the windowsill so tightly his knuckles had turned white. I'm fine, he said automatically, though he was increasingly certain that wasn't true. Before anyone could question him further, Sakura returned from examining the samurai patients. Their chakra networks are changing, she reported, concern evident in her voice. The golden energy is integrating with their existing pathways, creating new connections. It's not damaging tissue, but it's altering how chakra flows through their bodies. Is it dangerous? Mifune asked. I can't say for certain, Sakura admitted. The process appears controlled, almost deliberate, but whether the end result will be harmful. She shook her head. I need more information. That settles our first priority, Sasuke said. We need to examine the site directly. Mifune frowned. My men have established a perimeter 50 meters from the edge of the affected area. No one has been permitted closer since these two fell ill. With respect, General, Shino interjected, my insects can scout without risking human exposure. Additionally, Hinata's Byakugan allows observation from a safe distance. And the Sharringan might reveal aspects of the sealing techniques invisible to normal sight, Sasuke added. Mifune considered this, then nodded reluctantly. Very well, but approach no closer than necessary. And at the first sign of adverse effects, withdraw immediately. As they prepared to visit the perimeter, Naruto found himself both drawn to and apprehensive about the anomaly site. Something about it called to him, a pull he couldn't explain but increasingly couldn't ignore. Naruto. Sasuke's voice broke into his thoughts. They were alone for the moment, the others gathering equipment. If you're compromised, you need to stay back. Naruto bristled. I'm not compromised. Your eyes, Sasuke said flatly. They're changing. What? Sasuke produced a small mirror from his pack and held it up. Naruto stared at his reflection in shock. Faint golden specks had appeared in his blue irises, glimmering like tiny stars. What the hell? He whispered. It started when we reached the border. Sasuke said. I noticed during the night watch. It's getting more pronounced the closer we get to the anomaly. Naruto swallowed hard. You think I should stay back? It wasn't a question, but Sasuke shook his head anyway. No, I think you might be connected to whatever this is, which makes you either the last person who should go near it, or the only one who needs to, Naruto finished. Their eyes met in understanding. Years of fighting alongside, and against, each other had given them an almost instinctive grasp of each other's thinking. Just, don't do anything reckless, Sasuke said. Naruto's mouth quirked in a half-smile. Now you're just asking the impossible. The perimeter around the anomaly site was marked by a series of red flags planted in the snow. Beyond them, the landscape changed dramatically. Snow had melted in a perfect circle, revealing bare rock etched with intricate patterns that spiraled toward the center. The stone pillar they'd seen in photographs stood there, approximately 3 meters tall, covered in the same unknown script. Most striking, however, were the golden threads that only Naruto could see, countless filaments of light rising from the pillar and spreading outward like the strands of an enormous web. They pulsed with a slow, steady rhythm that matched the golden markings on the affected samurai. You see something we don't, Hinata said quietly as they approached the perimeter. It wasn't a question. Naruto nodded. Golden threads, connecting everything. They're strongest at the pillar. Hinata activated her Byakugan, focusing intently on the area Naruto indicated. After a moment, her eyes widened slightly. There's something, not clear like you describe, but I can detect disturbances in the chakra field, like ripples in water. Shino's insects swarmed forward, crossing the perimeter line and spreading across the anomaly in organized patterns. My insects sense it too, he confirmed. Their drive, on to certain points where the energy concentrates. Sasuke stepped closer to the perimeter, Sharringan active. The markings on the ground are a sealing array, but unlike any I've studied. It's old. Are older than techniques developed by the Uchiha or even the Uzumaki clan. Can you decipher it? Sakura asked. Not completely, but certain elements are recognizable. There are symbols for bridge, gateway, and something that might translate as divine or celestial. A chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air ran through the group. A gateway to what? Hinata voiced the question they were all thinking. Before anyone could speculate, one of Shino's insects returned, landing on his outstretched finger. He listened to its silent report, then looked up with increased concern. The central pillar is not a solid object, he said. It appears to be a concentration of the same energy affecting the samurai, merely taking solid form. A manifestation rather than an artifact, Sasuke murmured. That changes things. Naruto's attention had fixed on the pillar. The pressure behind his eyes had become nearly unbearable, and the golden threads in his vision pulsed more rapidly, as if responding to his presence. Without conscious decision, he took a step forward, crossing the perimeter line. Naruto. Sakura's alarmed voice barely registered. Another step, and another. The gold threads seemed to reach toward him now, curling through the air like curious tendrils. Naruto, stop! Sasuke moved to intercept him but halted at the perimeter, unwilling to risk exposure himself. Naruto turned back to his friends, a strange calm settling over him despite their obvious alarm. "It's okay," he said, though he wasn't sure why he believed that. "It's not hostile. You can't know that," Hinata protested, genuine fear in her voice. "I can," Naruto insisted. "Somehow, I do." He continued forward, drawn inexorably toward the central pillar. The golden threads thickened around him, brushing against his skin with a sensation like warm sunlight. Where they touched, his chakra responded, surging and shifting in unfamiliar patterns. 20 meters from the pillar, Naruto stopped. The script carved into the stone was suddenly, inexplicably legible to him, though he'd never seen the language before. "To bridge the divine and mortal realms," he read aloud, voice carrying clearly to his worried companions. "The golden-eyed guardian shall arise when the worlds align once more." The ground beneath his feet began to glow, the etched patterns illuminating with the same golden light that filled his vision. The pillar pulsed in response, its light intensifying until it was painful to look at directly. Naruto heard his friends shouting, saw them moving toward him despite the danger. But events had acquired a dreamlike inevitability. The golden threads converged on him from all directions, wrapping around his body like a cocoon of light. For one breathless moment, everything stopped, sound, motion. Even time itself seemed suspended. Then pain exploded behind his eyes, white-hot and all-consuming. Naruto fell to his knees, hands pressed against his temples as liquid fire seemed to pour through his veins. His chakra network burned as if rearranging itself, new pathways opening while others shifted or closed. Through the haze of agony, he sensed more than saw his friends reaching him. Felt Sakura's healing chakra attempting to stabilize him, heard Hinata's voice calling his name with increasing desperation. Then darkness claimed him, but it was a darkness shot through with threads of gold. Leading somewhere beyond the world he knew, Naruto floated in a sea of golden light. There was no pain here, no fear, only a profound sense of connection to something vast and ancient. Awareness expanded beyond his physical form, touching other minds, other realities. "You have found us at last," a voice said, though voice wasn't quite the right word. It was more like thought-given form, directly impressed upon his consciousness. "Who are you?" Naruto asked, or tried to. He had no body here, no mouth to speak with. "We are the Keepers," the not voice replied. "Guardians of the boundaries between realms." Images flowed into Naruto's mind. Beings of pure golden light maintaining the walls between dimensions, preventing chaos where order should reign. He saw the Mortal world as merely one plane among countless others, separated by barriers both fragile and essential. "Why me?" Naruto managed to ask. "The bloodlines converge in you," came the response. "Uzumaki vitality, Namikaze brilliance, and deeper still, a thread of Uchiha heritage long forgotten, diluted through generations but preserved in your unique chakra." This revelation stunned Naruto. Uchiha blood, how was that possible? "Many generations passed," the keeper explained, sensing his confusion. "Before the clan wars, before villages were formed, an Uchiha woman fled conflict, changing her name, her identity lost to history. Her bloodline merged with what would become the Uzumaki clan, dormant but never truly gone. The golden Sharringan," Naruto said, understanding dawning. "That's what's happening to my eyes." "The divine eye," the keeper corrected. "What mortals call Sharringan is but one expression of a power far older. In you, blood of Uzumaki and forgotten Uchiha combines with your unique experiences, housing the 9 tails, touching 6 paths power, connecting with all tailed beasts. A convergence never before possible. But why now? Why here?" "The boundaries weaken," came the grave response. "What your kind called the Fourth Great Ninja War caused damage to the walls between realms. Kagaya's emergence, the infinite Tsukuyomi, ripples spread far beyond your understanding. Now, something stirs in the divine realms, seeking entrance to your world." A sense of foreboding washed over Naruto. "Something dangerous. Balance disrupted invites chaos," the keeper replied cryptically. "The golden sight awakens in you because a guardian is needed. One who can perceive the threads connecting all realms and, when necessary, reweave them." Before Naruto could ask more questions, the golden sea around him began to pulse urgently. The keeper's presence grew distant. Time grows short. The awakening is not complete, and your mortal form cannot sustain this connection for long. Return now, guardian. Learn to use what has been given. We shall speak again when you are ready. The golden light receded, darkness rushing in to fill the void. Naruto felt himself falling, tumbling back toward his body and the world he knew. One warning, the keeper's voice came faintly through the encroaching darkness. Others will sense your awakening. Some will seek to use you, others to destroy you. Trust the golden threads, they cannot lie. Then there was only darkness, and pain, and the sound of familiar voices calling his name. Vital signs stabilizing. Naruto, can you hear me? Sakura's voice, professional but unable to fully mask her concern. Naruto tried to open his eyes, but his eyelids felt impossibly heavy. His chakra network is, I've never seen anything like it. Hinata now, wonder and worry mingled in her tone. Everyone back, give him space. Sasuke's commanding voice, closer than the others. With tremendous effort, Naruto forced his eyes open. Blurry faces resolved slowly into his friends. Gathered around what he now realized was a bed in the research outpost's medical section. Welcome back, Sasuke said quietly. You've been unconscious for 6 hours. The samurai, Naruto asked, his voice rough. Recovered shortly after you collapsed, Sakura answered, checking his pulse. The golden markings faded from everyone affected, including the two who'd been unconscious the longest. Naruto tried to sit up, but gentle hands pressed him back down. Not yet, Sakura admonished. Your chakra is still settling. My eyes, Naruto said. What? A hesitant silence fell over the group. Hinata stepped forward, offering a small mirror. See for yourself. Naruto took the mirror with trembling hands and nearly dropped it when he saw his reflection. His foe, arm-early blue irises were now predominantly gold, with intricate patterns like tomo swirling within them, similar to the Sharringan but distinctly different. The gold wasn't solid but seemed to flow and shift like liquid metal. The golden Sharringan, he whispered. You know what this is? Sasuke demanded, leaning closer. Naruto nodded slowly, memories of his vision crystallizing. Not exactly a Sharringan, but something related. Older. Quote. He explained what the keeper had told him, about the boundaries between realms, his unexpected Uchiha ancestry, and the warning about something seeking entrance to their world. When he finished, a heavy silence fell over the room. Even General Mifune, who had been listening from the doorway, appeared deeply troubled. This threatens far more than the land of iron, the samurai leader said gravely. If boundaries between realms are weakening, it explains the phenomena we've been observing, Shino noted. Not just here, but reports from across the Obi world of unusual chakra disturbances. Sasuke's expression had grown increasingly dark as Naruto spoke. Kagaya was just the beginning, he said quietly. There are other divine entities, or whatever we should call them. But Naruto's connection to this golden Sharringan provides an advantage, Hinata pointed out, her gaze fixed on Naruto with a mix of concern and something deeper. The keeper chose him for a reason. Is using him, Sasuke countered. We can't assume these keepers have humanity's best interests at heart. Naruto struggled to sit up again, and this time Sakura didn't stop him. I don't think they're malevolent, he said. They've been maintaining these boundaries for, I don't even know how long. Protecting our world, not threatening it. What matters now is understanding your new abilities, Sakura said practically, and determining what our next steps should be. Naruto closed his eyes, focusing inward. His chakra felt different. Not larger or stronger, exactly, but more complex. With new pathways and connections he'd never sensed before. When he opened his eyes again, the golden threads had returned to his vision, but they were less overwhelming now, like an overlay he could focus on or ignore as needed. I can see connections, he said slowly. Between people, objects, places, everything is connected by these golden threads. And I think, he raised a hand experimentally, focusing on a thread that connected him to a cup of water on the bedside table. With a thought, the cup slid several inches across the surface. The others stared in shock. That wasn't wind release, Sasuke observed. You manipulated the connection itself. Naruto nodded, a smile slowly spreading across his face despite the gravity of the situation. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be dangerous, Sakura corrected sternly. You need to learn control before you accidentally tear a hole between dimensions or something equally catastrophic. Always the optimist, Sakura-chan. Naruto teased, though he took her point. General Mifune stepped fully into the room. What are your recommendations, Shinobi of Konoha? This situation extends beyond my jurisdiction. But the Land of Iron stands ready to assist. Sasuke looked to Naruto, then to the others. We need to report to the Hokage immediately. This information changes everything, not just our mission parameters, but potentially how we understand the very nature of our world. I should stay here, Naruto said. At least for a while. The connection to the Keepers is strongest at the anomaly site. I might learn more about what we're facing. Naruto's statement hung in the air, met with immediate resistance from his teammates. Absolutely not, Sakura said firmly. You've just undergone a massive chakra transformation. You need medical observation and controlled testing, not more exposure to whatever caused this. Sasuke's expression remained neutral, but his eyes narrowed slightly. Dividing our forces is tactically unsound, especially when we don't understand what we're dealing with. I agree with Sakura-san, Hinata added, her voice quiet but resolute. Your safety must come first, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked between his friends, frustration evident. I understand your concern, but this isn't just happening to me. The Keeper said boundaries are weakening everywhere. If I can learn to control this power, maybe I can help fix them. Or make things worse through ignorance, Shino countered pragmatically. My insects detected energy patterns at the site that fluctuated with your proximity. Your presence could potentially accelerate whatever process is occurring. General Mifune, who had been listening silently, cleared his throat. If I may offer a compromise. The shinobi of Konoha should indeed report to their Hokage, but perhaps we could establish a research team here that includes Uzumaki-san and appropriate support. Sasuke considered this. 2 teams. One returns to Konoha with samples and data. Requests reinforcements with specialized knowledge. The second remains here to monitor the situation and continue investigation. I volunteer to stay, Hinata said immediately. All eyes turned to her in mild surprise. Though she'd grown more confident over the years, such assertiveness was still somewhat unexpected. My Byakugan allows me to observe chakra flow patterns, she explained calmly. If Naruto-kun is learning to control this new ability, my eyes might help identify potential problems before they occur. Naruto found himself oddly touched by her willingness to remain. Thanks, Hinata. She met his golden-eyed gaze steadily, a faint blush coloring her cheeks. Of course, I should return to Konoha, Sakura said reluctantly. The hospital has EQU. IP meant that might help analyze the medical aspects of this transformation. She fixed Naruto with a stern look. But I'm leaving you with explicit instructions and expect daily reports on your condition. Yes, ma'am, Naruto replied with a mock salute. I will remain as well, Shino decided. My insects can monitor the anomaly site for changes without risking human exposure. Then I'll lead the team back to Konoha, Sasuke concluded. We'll depart at dawn. With the decision made, the group dispersed to make preparations, all except Hinata, who lingered by Naruto's bedside. You should rest, she said gently. Your chakra network is still adapting. Naruto sighed, relaxing back against the pillows. The exhaustion he'd been fighting suddenly hit him full force. Yeah, you're probably right. Hinata hesitated, then said, I'd like to monitor your chakra flow while you sleep. With your permission, will it help you understand what's happening to me? She nodded. The Byakugan can track subtle changes that might otherwise go unnoticed. Then sure, Naruto agreed, settling more comfortably. Just wake me if anything weird happens. Weirder than usual, I mean. A small smile touched Hinata's lips. I promise. As Naruto drifted toward sleep, the golden threads in his vision seemed to dim and recede, but he noticed one particularly bright strand connecting him to Hinata. It pulsed with a warm, steady light that somehow felt reassuring. His last conscious thought was a hazy memory of the Keeper's words, trust the golden threads, they cannot lie. Sasuke's team departed early the next morning, carrying samples, data, and urgent messages for the Hokage. Naruto stood at the outpost's entrance to see them off, still feeling slightly unsteady but determined not to show weakness. "Don't do anything stupid until I get back," Sasuke told him quietly as they clasped forearms in farewell. "Wouldn't dream of it," Naruto replied with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sakura gave him a brief but fierce hug. "Follow my medical instructions. All of them." "Yes, Dr. Haruno." As they watched the departure team disappear into the mountain passes, Naruto felt a momentary pang of doubt. Should he have insisted on returning to Konoha with them? Was staying here truly the right choice? Second thoughts. Shino asked, somehow reading his expression despite the high collar that obscured most of his own face. "Just wondering if I'm being selfish," Naruto admitted. "Choosing to stay where I feel a connection rather than reporting directly to Kakashi-sensei." "Your presence here serves a practical purpose," Shino pointed out. "Logic suggests remaining near the source of your transformation provides the best opportunity to understand it. Besides," Hinata added, joining them, "you're not alone. We'll face this together." The simple conviction in her voice bolstered Naruto's resolve. "Right. So, what's first on our agenda?" "General Mifune has granted us access to their research," Shino said. "I suggest we begin by reviewing all documented anomalies to establish patterns." They spent the morning in the research center, poring over reports, photographs, and sensor readings collected since the phenomenon first appeared. Naruto found himself growing increasingly frustrated. The clinical data seemed disconnected from what he'd experienced directly. "This isn't working," he finally said, pushing away from the table. "These reports don't capture what I can see, what I can feel." Hinata looked up from the document she'd been studying. "What do you suggest?" "I need to go back to the site," Naruto said firmly. "Not to touch the pillar again, but to observe. Now that I'm conscious and somewhat prepared, I might notice things I missed before." Shino and Hinata exchanged glances. "That would be inadvisable without proper precautions," Shino began. "I'll stay behind the perimeter," Naruto promised. "And you'll both be with me to monitor for any changes." After some discussion, they agreed to a brief observation mission with strict limitations: remain beyond the perimeter, withdraw at the first sign of adverse effects, and maintain constant communication. General Mifune assigned 2 samurai to accompany them, not as guards, he insisted, but as observers who could report back if anything unexpected occurred. The unspoken implication was clear: the samurai didn't entirely trust shinobi near the phenomenon that had caused so much concern in their territory. The walk to the anomaly site was conducted in tense silence. Though the day was clear, an ominous atmosphere seemed to hang over the perfectly circular clearing where the pillar stood. The golden threads were immediately visible to Naruto as they approached, though less chaotic than during his previous visit. "They're more organized now," he commented, stopping well short of the red flags marking the perimeter. "Flowing in specific patterns rather than reaching randomly." Hinata activated her Byakugan, focusing intently on the area. "I can see disturbances in the chakra field, more pronounced than before. They follow geometric patterns, almost like a mandala centered on the pillar." No dispatched his insects in a carefully planned formation. "Temperature variations follow the same patterns," he reported after receiving their feedback. "Warmer along certain lines, cooler in others." Naruto studied the golden threads, trying to make sense of their arrangement. They reminded him of something. "It's like a seal," he said suddenly. "Not just the markings on the ground, but the energy flows. They're forming a massive 3-dimensional sealing array." "A seal for what purpose?" one of the samurai asked, breaking his professional silence. "To strengthen the boundary," Naruto replied, the knowledge somehow coming to him as he observed. "This isn't causing the problem, it's responding to it. The keepers are trying to repair damage to the walls between realms." He pointed to AR. A is where the golden threads seem to cluster more densely. "Those are weak points, places where the boundary is thinnest." Hinata followed his gesture, her Byakugan straining to perceive what he described. "There are fluctuations in those areas, like ripples in a pond. Something's pushing from the other side," Naruto said grimly. "Testing for weaknesses." A chill ran through the group at his words. "We should document this," Shino said practically. "Map the locations of these weak points. They spent the next hour carefully recording observations, with Naruto identifying areas of concern. While Hinata and Shino used their abilities to corroborate his findings with detectable phenomena. The samurai assistants marked coordinates and took measurements, their initial skepticism gradually giving way to grim focus as the pattern became clear. The weaknesses form a spiral, Hinata observed as they compiled their data. Expanding outward from the pillar. And growing, Naruto added, say, NSING rather than seeing how the golden threads strain to maintain their connections. Whatever's happening, it's accelerating. As if in response to his words, a tremor ran through the ground beneath their feet. The golden threads pulsed erratically, and for a brief, terrifying moment, Naruto glimpsed something through one of the weak points. A landscape of impossible geometry under a sky of swirling colors that hurt to look at. We need to leave, he said urgently, backing away. Now, they didn't question his sudden alarm, immediately retreating toward the outpost. Behind them, the pillar flared with golden light, then dimmed again as the tremor subsided. What did you see? Hinata asked once they were a safe distance away. Another realm, Naruto replied, his voice hushed. Just for a second. It was wrong. Like looking at something our minds aren't built to comprehend. Back at the outpost, they reported their findings to General Mifune, who listened with increasing concern. If I understand correctly, the samurai leader said when they finished, this phenomenon is actually a response to damage in the fabric of reality. A repair attempt rather than an intrusion. That's my belief, Naruto confirmed. But the repairs aren't holding. Something wants in, and it's getting stronger. Then what is our best course of action? Mifune asked pragmatically. Naruto hesitated, then said, I need to learn to control this ability, the golden Sharringan. The keeper said I was chosen as a guardian because of my unique chakra. If I can understand how to use these powers, maybe I can help strengthen the boundaries. How do you propose to learn such control? Shino inquired. Through practice, Naruto said simply. Starting small, with the threads I can see here in the outpost, away from the anomaly site. Hinata nodded thoughtfully. I can help monitor the effects on your chakra network during your attempts. And my insects can detect any wider environmental impacts, Shino added. General Mifune considered this, then nodded. Very well, I will allocate a secure training area within the outpost for this purpose. But at the first sign of danger to my people or territory, we stop immediately, Naruto promised. I have no intention of making things worse. The training area was a small, windowless room with reinforced walls, originally designed for samurai to practice more destructive techniques safely. Now it contained only Naruto, Hinata, and a collection of simple objects, cups, stones, scrolls, arranged on a table for manipulation practice. Ready? Naruto asked, rolling his shoulders to release tension. Hinata nodded. Byakugan activated. I'll monitor your chakra flow. Start with something simple. Naruto focused on a wooden cup, seeing the golden threads that connected it to the table. To the air around it, to himself. He concentrated on the thread linking him directly to the cup, willing it to respond to his intent. The cup trembled slightly but didn't move. You're forcing it, Hinata observed. Your chakra is spiking erratically. Naruto took a deep breath, trying a different approach. Rather than imposing his will on the thread, he attempted to harmonize with it. Feeling its natural resonance and gently suggesting rather than commanding. This time, the cup slid smoothly across the table. Better, Hinata said with an encouraging smile. Your chakra flowed naturally with the connection. Emboldened, Naruto tried lifting the cup. It rose a few inches into the air, wobbled, then dropped back to the table with a clatter. Vertical manipulation requires more precise control, Hinata noted. The threads connecting to gravity are different from those connecting objects horizontally. They continued practicing for hours, Naruto gradual. Why gaining finer control over simple movements? By late afternoon, he could manipulate multiple objects simultaneously, creating a slow orbit of cups and stones around himself. This is just the beginning, he said, carefully setting everything back on the table. The keeper suggested I could eventually reweave the threads themselves, not just work with existing connections. One step at a time, Hinata cautioned. Your chakra reserves are impressive, but this ability taxes you differently than your usual techniques. Naruto nodded. suddenly aware of a bone-deep fatigue that had crept up on him. Using the golden Sharringan drained him in subtle ways, less obvious than the physical exhaustion of battle but no less real. "We should rest," Hinata suggested, noticing his flagging energy. "Continue tomorrow when you've recovered." "Just one more thing," Naruto said. "I want to try something different." Before she could object, he focused on the golden threads connecting him to Hinata. Unlike the simple, utilitarian connections to inanimate objects, these were complex, multi-layered, and vibrant with life. The primary thread between them pulsed with particular brightness, carrying emotional resonances he hadn't noticed before. With gentle concentration, he sent a simple thought along the connection: "Thank you for helping me." Hinata's eyes widened in shock. "Naruto-kun," she gasped, "I heard you, in my mind." It worked. Naruto's excitement momentarily banished his fatigue. "I wasn't sure it would. I just followed the strongest thread between us and tried to send a thought along it. It was clear, like you were speaking." "But," she touched her temple wonderingly. "Inside, how did you know you could do that?" "I didn't," Naruto admitted. "But the golden threads carry information, impressions. I thought maybe they could carry deliberate communication too." He swayed slightly, the effort catching up with him. Hinata stepped forward quickly, steadying him with a hand on his arm. "That's definitely enough for today," she said firmly. "You need food and rest." Naruto didn't argue, allowing her to guide him from the training room toward the outpost's small dining area. As they walked, he found himself increasingly aware of the golden thread connecting them, stronger and more complex than those linking him to others in the outpost. He wondered what that meant but was too exhausted to puzzle it out now. Days passed in a rhythm of training, observation, and research. Naruto's control over his new abilities improved rapidly, as did his understanding of the golden thread's nature. They weren't merely connections, he discovered, but channels through which energy, information, and even emotions flowed constantly between all things. Hinata proved invaluable, her Byakugan, perceiving changes in his chakra network that helped identify more efficient techniques. Shino's analytical mind contributed equally important insights, recognizing patterns in how the threads responded to different stimuli. A week after Sasuke's departure, Naruto attempted his most ambitious manipulation yet, not just moving objects but temporarily strengthening the connections between them. In the training room, under Hinata's watchful eye, he focused on a cracked stone, visualizing the golden threads that bound its pieces together. "The threads are naturally weak where the stone is damaged," he explained as he worked. "If I can reinforce them, make them function as if the stone were whole." With careful concentration, he poured his chakra into the connections, reinforcing in temporar, reweaving them into a stronger configuration. The crack in the stone didn't visibly change, but when he tested it, the stone held together as if newly forged. "Remarkable," Hinata breathed, Byakugan tracking the changes. "You've altered the fundamental relationship between the pieces without physically changing them." "This is what the keeper meant," Naruto said excitedly. "Reweaving the threads to strengthen boundaries. If I can do it with a stone, maybe I can do it with the weak points we identified at the anomaly site." Hinata's expression grew concerned. "That's a significant leap in scale and complexity." "I know," Naruto acknowledged. "I'm not suggesting we try immediately. But it gives us a direction, a specific goal to work toward." Their discussion was interrupted by a commotion from the main building. They hurried to investigate and found General Mifune conferring urgently with several officers. Maps were spread across tables, with markers indicating locations throughout the Land of Iron. "What's happening?" Naruto asked. Mifune looked up grimly. "New anomalies have appeared at 3 locations across our territory. Reports describe phenomena identical to what we observed here initially: strange lights, golden markings on exposed individuals, unusual behavior in wildlife." Naruto felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. "It's spreading." "Not just spreading," Shino corrected, joining them with several reports in hand. "According to these observations, the new sites form a precise geometric pattern when mapped in relation to our original anomaly." He placed a transparent overlay on the map, revealing how the 4 known sites created a perfect square across the Land of Iron's territory. A larger seal, Naruto realized. The pillar here was just one anchor point. Whatever's happening, it's operating on a much bigger scale than we thought. We've dispatched samurai to establish perimeters around the new sites, Mifune informed them. But our resources are stretched thin. If more appear, they will, Naruto said with certainty. This is just the beginning. As if to confirm his words, a messenger burst into the room. General, urgent communication from Konoha. Similar phenomena have been reported in Fire Country, Water Country, and Earth Country. The 5 Kage are calling for an emergency summit. The implications hung heavy in the air. What had seemed a localized mystery was becoming a global crisis. We need to visit one of the new sites, Naruto decided. Compare it to what we've learned here. I'll accompany you, Hinata said immediately. As will I, Shino added. Comparing data points is essential for pattern recognition. General Mifune nodded agreement. I'll arrange transportation to the nearest new anomaly. It's approximately 4 hours' journey from here. As preparations were made, Naruto stepped outside for a moment of quiet reflection. The sky above the mountains was clear and blue, betraying nothing of the cosmic disturbances threatening their world. He activated his golden Sharringan, looking beyond normal vision. Golden threads stretched across the landscape, connecting mountains, trees, rocks, and sky in an intricate web. But now he could see distortions in the pattern, places where the threads strained and twisted unnaturally, like fabric about to tear. It's getting worse, he murmured to himself. Naruto-kun, Hinata's voice came from behind him. Are you all right? He turned to find her watching him with concern. The golden thread connecting them shimmered with worry and something deeper, something he was beginning to recognize but wasn't quite ready to name. Just thinking, he said, about what we're really facing here. She moved to stand beside him, her presence somehow steadying. What do you see? Damage, he replied simply. To the very fabric of reality. And whatever's causing it isn't stopping. Hinata was silent for a moment, then said quietly, during the war, when all seemed lost, you never gave up hope. You inspired everyone to keep fighting against impossible odds. This is different, Naruto said. Back then, I understood our enemy, knew what we were fighting. This, he gestured vaguely at the invisible distortions only he could see. How do you fight something that exists beyond our reality? The same way you've faced every challenge, Hinata answered with quiet certainty. One step at a time, never alone, and with the unshakable belief that there's always a path forward, even when we can't see it yet. Naruto looked at her, really looked, seeing beyond her family. Are features to the golden threads that made up her essence. They shone with courage, compassion, and unwavering faith. The connection between them pulsed strong and true. When did you get so wise, Hinata? He asked with a small smile. A faint blush colored her cheeks. I learned from watching you. The moment stretched between them, comfortable yet charged with unspoken feelings. Finally, Naruto straightened his shoulders. Resolve returning. You're right, he said. One step at a time. Let's start by understanding what we're facing, then worry about how to fight it. They returned inside to complete preparations for their journey. But Naruto carried with him a renewed sense of purpose, and a growing awareness of the golden thread connecting him to the quiet, strong woman at his side. The second anomaly site was nestled in a valley between 3 mountain peaks, far from any settlements. Unlike the original site, no research outpost had been established here yet, only a hastily construct. Perimeter guarded by a small contingent of samurai. As they approached, Naruto immediately activated his golden Sharringan. The scene that greeted him was both familiar and disturbing, another stone. Pillar at the center of a perfect circle, golden threads radiating outward. But the configuration was subtly different, the threads forming patterns that complemented rather than mirrored those at the first sight. It's part of a larger structure, he explained to Hinata and Shino as they observed from beyond the perimeter. The pillars are anchor points, but the real work is happening in the connections between them. Hinata's Byakugan confirmed his assessment. The chakra flows here are oriented differently, like they're being pulled toward the original site. A network, Shino concluded after his insects reported back. Each site draws energy from its surroundings and channels it in specific directions. Naruto walked slowly around the perimeter, studying the golden threads from different angles. They're trying to create a massive barrier, he said finally. The keepers are using these anchor points to generate enough energy to repair the boundaries between realms. But it's not working, Hinata observed. noting distortions similar to those Naruto had seen earlier. No, Naruto agreed grimly. Whatever's pushing from the other side is too strong. The repairs can't keep pace with the damage. A troubling thought occurred to him. What if my transformation is part of the same defensive measure? The keeper said I was chosen as a guardian because of my unique chakra. Maybe awakening the golden Sharringan in me was another attempt to strengthen the barriers. An indigenous defense mechanism, Shino suggested. Logical, if somewhat concerning in its implications. Concerning how? Hinata asked. If forces beyond our comprehension are desperate enough to grant a human divine-level abilities, Shino explained, then the threat must be proportionally severe. The samurai, captain who had escorted them to the site, shifted uncomfortably at these words. Uzumaki-san, what do you recommend? Should we attempt to disable these pillars, or protect them? Protect them, Naruto said without hesitation. They're not the problem. They're part of the solution, even if it's not sufficient yet. Destroying them would only weaken the boundaries further. As they continued their investigation, Naruto felt a familiar pressure building behind his eyes. The golden threads seemed to brighten, converging toward him as if responding to his presence. Something's happening, he warned, stepping back from the perimeter. The pillar at the center of the anomaly flared with brilliant light. For a moment, Naruto thought he glimpsed a figure of pure golden energy standing beside it, regarding him with ancient eyes. Guardian, a voice spoke directly into his mind, the same presence he'd encountered during his transformation. The time grows short. The enemy has sensed your awakening and moves to counter it. Who is the enemy? Naruto asked aloud, drawing concerned looks from his companions. One who was sealed beyond the divine realms eons ago. One who hungers for your world's chakra. The damage to the boundaries weakens ancient bindings. How do I stop it? Naruto demanded. Learn. Grow. Master the golden sight. When the final anchor manifests, you must be ready to complete the Great Seal. Final anchor. How many will there be? 9 pillars for 9 boundaries. The pattern is nearly complete. The golden figure began to fade, the light dimming. Beware, Guardian. The enemy sends its servants ahead. They will seek to destroy the anchors, and you. With those ominous words, the presence vanished. The pillar returned to its previous state, golden threads settling into their regular patterns. Naruto-kun, Hinata's worried voice broke through his daze. Who are you speaking to? He turned to find all of them, Hinata, Shino, and the samurai escorts, staring at him. With varying degrees of concern and alarm. One of the keepers, he explained. It warned me that whatever's trying to break through has sensed my awakening. It's sending something to destroy the anchor points and stop me. A threat assessment, Shino stated flatly. Logical, but unwelcome. Did it say when? Hinata asked practically. Naruto shook his head. Just that time is short. There will be 9 anchor points total, 9 pillars. Once they're all active, I'm supposed to do something to complete a Great Seal and reinforce the boundaries. The samurai captain bowed formally. We will increase security at all known sites immediately and alert General Mifune. We should return to the original site, Hinata suggested. If an attack is coming, that's likely to be the primary target. Naruto nodded agreement, but as they prepared to depart, a cold sensation washed over him. The golden threads in his vision suddenly pulled taut, vibrating with tension. Something's wrong, he said sharply. We need to move, now. They had barely taken 10 steps when the ground beneath them heaved violently. A deafening crack split the air as a fissure opened in the earth, stretching from the perimeter toward the central pillar. Earthquake, the samurai captain shouted over the rumbling. No, Naruto replied, golden eyes fixed on something only he could see. Something's breaking through. The fissure widened, and from its depths rose a figure that defied description, a being composed of shifting shadows and angles that seemed to bend in impossible ways. Where a face might be, there was only a void that hurt to look at directly. The samurai drew their swords, moving into defensive positions despite their obvious horror. Shino's insects swarmed forward, attempting to gather information about the intruder. My insects cannot perceive it properly, Shino reported, a rare note of alarm in his voice. Their senses are confused. Hinata's Byakugan activated, then she gasped in pain, deactivating it immediately. It has no chakra network, she said. Looking at it with the Byakugan is like staring into a negative space that shouldn't exist. The shadowy entity moved toward the pillar with jerky, unnatural motions. Where it passed, the golden threads in Naruto's vision snapped and withered. It's destroying the connections, he realized. If it reaches the pillar. Without conscious decision, Naruto flashed through hand seals, summoning shadow clones that charged forward to intercept the entity. As they crossed the perimeter, each clone began to glow with golden light. The power of his awakened eyes flowing through them. The entity paused, turning its void-like face toward the approaching clones. A sound like shattering glass filled the air, and 3 of He clones simply ceased to exist. Not dispelled in the normal way, but erased as if they had never been. Fall back, Naruto ordered the samurai. Your weapons won't affect it. To their credit, the warriors held their ground, though their faces showed they understood the futility of their standard tactics. The remaining shadow clones engaged the entity, throwing Rasengans that exploded against its form without apparent effect. The entity simply flowed around the attacks, continuing its inexorable progress toward the pillar. Naruto focused on the golden threads surrounding the entity, seeing how they recoiled from its presence. On instinct, he reached out with his new awareness, grabbing hold of those threads and pulling them together into a net. To his surprise, the entity faltered as the golden energy converged around it. A discordant shriek split the air, and for a moment, the shadowy form seemed constrained. That's it, Naruto shouted. The threads can hold it. Focusing his will through the golden Sharringan, he poured more power into the improvised net, tightening the golden threads around the struggling entity. It writhed in apparent pain or frustration, its form distorting further as it fought the constraints. Hinata, watching with normal vision, saw only Naruto standing with his arms outstretched, golden eyes blazing, while an indistinct shadow twisted in the air before him. But she could feel the immense chakra he was channeling, far more than his standard techniques required. Naruto-kun, your chakra network is overloading, she warned, wishing she could activate Byakugan without the pain of looking directly at the entity. Can't. Stop. Naruto grunted through clenched teeth. If it reaches the pillar. The entity's struggles intensified. Cracks paired in reality itself around it. Literal fractures in the air through which glimpses of that same wrongly angled landscape Naruto had seen before became visible. With a final, desperate effort, Naruto twisted the golden threads into a sealing pattern, similar to what he'd practiced with the cracked stone but vastly more complex. The entity shrieked again as the golden light compressed around it, forcing its impossible angles into more natural dimensions. For one heart-stopping moment, it seemed Naruto had succeeded in containing it. Then the entity pulsed with darkness, and the golden threads shattered. The backlash hit Naruto like a physical blow, sending him stumbling backward as blood trickled from his nose and eyes. Naruto! Hinata cried, rushing to his side. The entity, seemingly weakened by the encounter, changed tactics. Instead of moving toward the pillar, it suddenly plunged back into the fissure from which it had emerged. The ground shuddered once more, then fell still as the fissure closed. Did we win? One of the samurai asked uncertainly. No, Naruto said, wiping blood from his face. It retreated, but it's not defeated. And now it knows what I can do. Shino's insects returned from scouting the area. No trace remains of the entity, he reported. However, the pillar appears damaged. The inscriptions have faded by approximately 17%. Naruto looked toward the center of the anomaly and saw that the golden threads emanating from the pillar had indeed dimmed, their patterns disrupted. We need to warn the other sites, he said urgently. And I need to get stronger, fast. That thing was just a scout, a servant, the keeper called it. If it could break free of my binding. You held an interdimensional entity at bay, Hinata pointed out, supporting him as he swayed slightly. That's not insignificant. It won't be enough, Naruto replied grimly. Not against whatever's coming next. As they made their hasty return journey to the original outpost, Naruto couldn't shake the feeling that he'd just experienced the first skirmish in a war unlike any the shinobi world had faced before, a conflict that would test not just his new abilities, but the very fabric of reality itself. Word of the encounter spread quickly. By the time they reached the original outpost, General Mifune had already received preliminary reports and mobilized additional samurai to all known anomaly sites. The atmosphere had shifted from scientific curiosity to military alertness. We've established communication protocols between sites, Mifune informed them as they gathered in the command center. Any sign of these entities will be reported immediately. That won't be enough, Naruto said, still looking pale but recovered from the immediate effects of the confrontation. Conventional weapons had no effect, and even my attempt to bind it with the golden threads only worked temporarily. Then what do you suggest? Mifune asked directly. Naruto hesitated, then said, I need to fully master this power, the golden Sharringan. What I did today was instinctive, unrefined. With proper control, I might be able to create bindings strong enough to hold these entities, may be even force them back to their own realm. And how do you propose to achieve this mastery? Shino inquired. I need to connect more deeply with the source, Naruto replied. The pillar at the original site. Not just observe it from a distance, but interact with it directly. His statement was met with immediate objections. Your last direct contact resulted in unconsciousness, Shino reminded him. And we have no idea what further exposure might do to you, Hinata added worriedly. Naruto understood their concerns but remained resolute. Last time, I was unprepared. The transformation caught me by surprise. Now I know what to expect and can approach it purposefully. The risk remains significant, Mifune observed neutrally. So is doing nothing, Naruto countered. That entity retreated, but it will return, probably with others. We need to be ready. After lengthy discussion, a compromise was reached. Naruto would approach the pillar again, but under strictly controlled conditions. Protective barriers would be established, monitoring equipment set up, and both Hinata and Shino would observe from the closest safe distance. Additionally, a medical team would stand ready to intervene at the first sign of trouble. Tomorrow morning, Mifune decided. That gives us time to prepare properly and for you to rest, Uzumaki-san. You'll need your full strength. Naruto wanted to argue for immediate action but recognized the wisdom in the general's words. The confrontation with the entity had drained him more than he cared to admit, and his chakra network still felt raw channeling the golden threads with such intensity. Fine, he agreed reluctantly. Tomorrow morning, as the meeting dispersed, Hinata approached him with quiet concern. You should eat something, she suggested. Then rest. I can monitor your chakra flow while you sleep to ensure it's stabilizing properly. You don't have to do that, Naruto said. You need rest too. I'm not the one who faced an interdimensional entity today, she pointed out with gentle firmness. Please, Naruto-kun, let me help. Too exhausted to argue, Naruto allowed her to guide him to the dining area, then to his small quarters. As he settled onto his bed, Hinata took a seat nearby, activating her Byakugan to observe his chakra network. Your pathways are still adjusting, she reported. The golden energy has integrated further with your natural chakra since last week. Is that good or bad? Naruto asked drowsily. Neither, necessarily. Just different. She hesitated, then added, when you faced that entity. Your chakra did something I've never seen before. It's as if the golden energy created new pathways instantly, bypassing normal limitations. Felt like it, Naruto mumbled, eyelids growing heavy. Quote, like tapping into power that was always there but inaccessible before. Rest now, Hinata said softly. I'll watch over you. As sleep claimed him, Naruto's last conscious thought was appreciation for her steady presence, and awareness of that golden thread connecting them, pulsing with quiet strength. In his dreams, Naruto stood in a vast space filled with golden light. Unlike his first encounter with the Keeper, this place felt familiar, almost like an extension of his own consciousness. You begin to understand, came a voice, not from any particular direction, but from everywhere at once. Naruto turned, finding himself facing the same golden figure he'd glimpsed briefly at the second anomaly site. Up close, its form was vaguely humanoid but composed entirely of radiant energy, features suggested rather than defined. The servant of the enemy tested you, the Keeper continued. You responded well for one so newly awakened. I failed, Naruto corrected. It escaped. It retreated, the Keeper countered. There is a difference. You demonstrated potential beyond our expectations. Not enough to stop what's coming, Naruto said. I need to understand this power better, faster. The Keeper's form shifted slightly. Something like approval radiating from it. Direct. Determined. The qualities that made you suitable. A pause, then, very well. We shall accelerate your instruction. The golden space around them transformed, forming into a landscape of threads extending in all directions, a visual representation of what Naruto saw through his awakened eyes. The golden sight reveals the fundamental connections between all things, the keeper explained. What you call reality is merely the physical expression of these connections. The threads are not metaphors, Naruto Uzumaki. They are more real than the matter they bind together. The keeper gestured, and certain threads brightened. These are connections of physical proximity, what holds matter in form. Another gesture highlighted different patterns. These govern time's flow. Yet another set illuminated. These connect conscious minds, allowing understanding between separate beings. And I can manipulate them all? Naruto asked, awed by the implications. To varying degrees, with practice and understanding. The golden Sharringan grants perception and influence over these connections. Unlike the traditional Sharringan, which primarily affects perception and chakra manipulation, your eyes can alter the fundamental relationships between objects, energies, and even concepts. The keeper moved closer, its radiance intensifying. Tomorrow, when you approach the anchor pillar, do not resist the connection. Open yourself fully to it. What you experienced before was merely preparation, the awakening of dormant potential. Now you must accept the full mantle of guardian. Will it hurt? Naruto asked, remembering the agony of his first transformation. Something like amusement emanated from the keeper. Growth often does. But you are stronger now, better prepared. The pain will be purposeful. The golden landscape began to fade, the dream drawing to a close. One last warning, the keeper said. The enemy grows stronger with each passing day. More servants will come, and eventually, it may find a way to reach through itself. Trust those bound to you by the strongest threads. They will be your anchors when reality itself wavers. As consciousness returned, bringing with it the dim light of early morning filtering through the outpost windows, Naruto found Hinata still at his bedside. She had fallen asleep in her chair, head tilted at an uncomfortable angle. The golden thread connecting them shimmered with protective warmth. Trust those bound by the strongest threads, the keeper had said. Looking at Hinata now, Naruto finally allowed himself to acknowledge what he'd been sensing since his awakening, the unique quality of their connection, stronger and more intricate than those linking him to others. Carefully, so as not to wake her, he adjusted her position to make her more comfortable. She stirred slightly but didn't wake, a small smile touching her lips as she settled. I will, he silently promised the distant keeper. I do. The morning brought clear skies and a sense of solemn purpose to the outpost. Word had spread of Naruto's intention to directly interact with the anomaly again. And an atmosphere of tense anticipation permeated the facility. Preparations had been made according to plan. A series of protective barriers now surrounded the pillar at decreasing distances, each assigned to contain different types of energy. Monitoring equipment had been set up at the perimeter, and medical personnel stood ready with supplies that might be needed. Naruto stood at the edge of the perimeter, dressed simply in standard shinobi attire. He'd refused protective gear, explaining that anything between him and the golden energy would only interfere with the connection. Hinata and Shino flanked him, concern evident in their postures despite their professional demeanor. The moment anything seems wrong, Shino reiterated, we intervene. Agreed. Define wrong, Naruto replied with a hint of his old humor. Pretty much everything about this situation qualifies. You know what he means, Hinata said softly. If you appear to be in genuine danger. I know, Naruto interrupted gently. And I appreciate it, but this has to happen, whatever the risk. General Mifune approached, his weathered face impassive. All preparations are complete, Uzumaki-san. We await your signal. Naruto nodded, taking a deep breath to center himself. I'm ready. With deliberate steps, he crossed the perimeter line, proceeding alone toward the central pillar. Unlike his first impulsive approach a week earlier, each movement now was careful and considered. Through his golden Sharringan, the landscape was transformed. Golden threads crisscrossed the area in complex patterns, densest around the pillar itself. They responded to his presence, swaying toward him like grass in a breeze. Don't resist the connection, the keeper had instructed in his dream. Naruto opened his awareness fully, EMB. Racing rather than merely observing the golden threads that reached for him. At 15 meters from the pillar, the first change occurred. The threads connecting him to the pillar thickened, pulsing with increased energy. Naruto felt his chakra respond, rising to meet the external power in harmonious resonance rather than resistance. At 10 meters, the script carved into the pillar began to glow. Each symbol illuminating in sequence as if activating. Naruto found he could read them effortlessly now. Ancient instructions for bridging realms, maintaining boundaries, channeling divine energy into mortal vessels. At 5 meters, the air around him became charged with visible energy. Golden light danced across his skin, sinking into his chakra network and enhancing the pathways already altered by his initial transformation. Finally, he stood before the pillar itself. Unlike before, no compulsion drove him to touch it, only clear purpose and decision. He raised his hand, fingers hovering just above the glowing surface. "For our world," he said quietly, then pressed his palm flat against the pillar. Golden light exploded outward in a shockwave that rippled across the entire anomaly site. Naruto's body arched backward, suspended in midair as energy poured into him from the pillar. Yet this time, there was no pain, only a vast expansion of awareness as his consciousness stretched beyond normal limitations. He perceived the entire network of pillars across the world, 7 now active, 2 more yet to manifest. He sensed the weakening boundaries between realms, the strain as something immense pressed against them from beyond. And he understood, with sudden clarity, his role in what was to come. The Guardian would stand at the nexus of worlds, wielding the golden sight to reinforce reality itself against forces that would unmake it. Not alone, never alone, but as the focal point for power drawn from many sources. Images flashed through his mind, the final pillars appearing in the HEA.RT of Fire Country and at the border of Wind Country, entities like the one he'd encountered emerging in greater numbers, a gathering of allies with unique abilities contributing to the final sealing, and at the center of it all, a confrontation with something vast and ancient that hungered for their world's chakra. As suddenly as it had begun, the connection stabilized. Naruto's feet touched the ground again, though golden energy continued to flow between him and the pillar in a constant exchange. "I understand now," he said, his voice carrying clearly to those watching anxiously from the perimeter. "I know what needs to be done." Turning, he walked back toward his friends, the golden light surrounding him gradually diminishing though never completely fading. His eyes, when he reached them, shone with more profound knowledge and purpose than before. "Naruto-kun," Hinata questioned tentatively, "are you, still you?" A smile broke across his face, the same warm, determined smile they knew so well. "Still me," he confirmed. "Just more." Relief washed over her features. "What happened? What did you learn?" "Everything," Naruto said simply. "Or at least, enough to know our next steps. We need to return to Konoha immediately. The 8th pillar will appear there soon, and we need to be ready." "Did the Keeper speak to you again?" Shino inquired. "Not in words," Naruto explained. "More like, I accessed knowledge directly. The pillars are creating a 9-fold seal to reinforce the boundaries between realms. When the final pillar appears, I'll need to activate the seal, but I can't do it alone." "What do you need?" General Mifune asked practically. "People with specific chakra affinities," Naruto replied. 9 individuals to represent different aspects of the seal. Alread. Why know some of them? Hinata's Byakugan makes her essential for perceiving the boundaries. Sasuke's Sharringan for manipulating dimensional space. Others will be revealed as we gather. "When do we leave?" Hinata asked, already mentally preparing. "As soon as possible," Naruto said. "The 8th pillar will manifest within days, and the 9th shortly after. Once all 9 appear, we'll have a very small window to complete the seal before the boundaries weaken beyond repair. I will arrange immediate transport to Fire Country's border," Mifune offered. "And send word ahead to Konoha of your approach." As preparations for departure began, Naruto took a moment alone with Hinata. The connection between them had grown even stronger following his communion with the pillar, and he sensed questions in her that she hesitated to voice. "You're concerned," he observed quietly. She nodded. "This power, it's changing you, Naruto-kun. Not in ways that seem harmful, but But you wonder if I'm still fully human. He finished gently. Her pale eyes widened slightly. I wouldn't have put it so bluntly. It's a fair question, Naruto acknowledged. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure of the answer. The golden Sharringan is connecting me to something beyond normal human experience. But my heart, my will, my bonds with others, those remain unchanged. He hesitated, then reached out to take her hand. A gesture of reassurance that felt suddenly more significant. Especially my bonds with those closest to me. The golden thread between them pulsed with shared emotion, and Hinata's fingers tightened around his. Then that's enough, she said simply. Whatever changes come, we'll face them together. Naruto nodded, drawing strength from her unwavering support. Together, he agreed. All of us. As they prepared to depart the land of iron, Naruto knew they were racing against time. The enemy beyond the boundaries grew stronger with each passing day, and the confrontation to come would test not just his new abilities, but the bonds between all those who would stand with him. The journey back to Konoha would be just the beginning of their true challenge. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Divine Threads. Konoha's gates loomed ahead as Naruto, Hinata, and Shino crested the final hill on their journey home. The afternoon sun bathed the village in warm light, making the familiar sight seem almost dream-like after their experiences in the land of iron. It had been a swift journey, 3 days of nearly continuous travel, stopping only when absolutely necessary for rest. Home, Naruto murmured, a complex mix of emotions coloring the word. Would the village still feel like home with everything that had changed? Would he still belong among its streets and people? The Hokage will have received General Mifune's messages by now, Shino noted pragmatically. They'll be expecting us. Hinata glanced at Naruto, noting the subtle golden glow that seemed to emanate from him in moments of deep thought or emotion, invisible to most, but clear to her Byakugan. Are you ready for this? Naruto understood the deeper question behind her words. Was he ready to face friends and comrades who might look at him differently now? Ready to explain what was happening to their world? Ready to lead others into a confrontation with forces beyond normal comprehension? Whether I'm ready or not doesn't matter, he replied, his voice steadier than he felt. It's happening either way. They approached the gates where Izumo and Kotetsu stood guard as always. The two Chunin straightened as they recognized the returning team. Naruto, you're back, Kotetsu called, then faltered as he noticed Naruto's changed eyes. The Hokage wants to see you immediately. I expected as much, Naruto replied with a smile that didn't quite reach his golden eyes. There's a lot of activity in the village, Izumo added, clearly curious but professional enough not to ask directly about Naruto's transformation. Sasuke Uchiha returned with quite a report. The council's been in session almost continuously. Naruto nodded in acknowledgement as they passed through the gates. The streets were indeed busier than normal, WITH shinobi moving purposefully between administrative buildings. Civilians went about their business, but there was an undercurrent of tension in the air, the sense that something significant was unfolding. And there were the stairs. As they made their way toward the Hokage Tower, people noticed Naruto's changed appearance. Some stopped and gaped openly, while others whispered behind their hands. A few children pointed before being hushed by parents. Just like old times, Naruto muttered with a wry half-smile. He'd spent his childhood being stared at for housing the Nine Tails, finally earned acceptance as a hero. And now found himself once again the object of wary glances. Hinata moved closer to his side, a silent gesture of support that didn't go unnoticed by observers, or by Naruto himself. The golden thread connecting them strengthened with her protective instinct. Naruto, a familiar voice called from ahead. Sakura pushed through the crowd, relief evident on her face. Thank goodness you're back. She stopped short when she got a clear look at him, medical assessment immediately taking precedence over friendly greeting. Your eyes, they've changed even more since we left the land of iron. It's a long story, Naruto replied, one I'd rather tell just once to everyone who needs to hear it. Sakura nodded in understanding. Kakashi-sensei has assembled a special council. They're waiting in the strategic command center, not his office, more space. Who's there? Shino inquired. The usual advisors, clan heads, Sasuke, Tsunade-sama came in from her travels, and Sakura hesitated, glancing at Naruto. Some others you might not expect. It seems Kakashi-sensei has been gathering information from multiple sources since Sasuke's return. They followed Sakura through the village, taking a less public route to avoid further attention. As they walked, Naruto's golden vision revealed something new, faint distortions in the threads that composed reality, similar to what he'd observed in the Land of Iron but subtler, as if just beginning. It's starting here too, he said quietly to Hinata and Shino. The boundaries are thinning. I've felt something, Hinata confirmed. A slight disturbance in chakra flows throughout the village. Nothing obvious yet, but growing. My insects have been unusually agitated since yesterday, Shino added. They sense changes in the environment before humans can perceive them. The strategic command center occupied the lowest level of the Hokage Tower, a large, circular room designed for planning major operations. When they entered, Naruto found himself facing a gathering larger than he'd anticipated. Kakashi sat at the head of the central table, flanked by the village elders. Around the table sat the heads of Konoha's major clans, Hiashi Hyuga, Shikaku Nara, Sume Inuzuka, and others. Tsunade and Shizune stood near a wall covered with maps and reports. Sasuke leaned against a pillar slightly apart from the others, arms crossed. Shikamaru, who had apparently taken on a coordinator role, moved between various information stations. Most surprising were the additional faces. Gaara of the Sand had come from Suna, accompanied by his siblings Temari and Kankuro. A representative from Kumogakure stood near them, Darui, one of the Raikage's most trusted jonin. Even more unexpected was Orochimaru's presence, standing in the shadows with an expression of clinical interest. All conversation ceased as Naruto entered. Every eye fixed on his transformed appearance, the golden irises with their shifting patterns that resembled, but differed from the traditional Sharringan. Kakashi broke the silence. Welcome back, Naruto. I see reports of your evolution weren't exaggerated. Probably understated, actually, Naruto replied, meeting the collective gaze without flinching. Things have accelerated since Sasuke left the Land of Iron. Then perhaps you should bring us up to date, Tsunade suggested, her medical eye clearly cataloging the changes in her former student. For the next hour, Naruto detailed everything that had happened, his communion with the Keeper, the attack by the interdimensional entity, his second interaction with the Pillar, and the knowledge he'd gained about the Ninefold Seal and the approaching threat. Hinata and Shino added their observations, providing corroboration and additional perspectives. When they finished, the room remained silent for several long moments as the implications sank in. To summarize, Shikaku Nara finally said, boundaries between our world and other realms are weakening. 9 pillars are manifesting globally as anchor points for a massive seal to reinforce these boundaries. Naruto has somehow evolved to become a guardian, with the ability to perceive and manipulate the connections that compose reality. And some entity from beyond these boundaries is actively trying to break through to our world. That's concise, Naruto acknowledged. The situation aligns with independent observations, Gaara stated in his characteristically direct manner. In the Land of Wind, we've documented 3 incidents matching the description of these anomalies. Most recently, a pillar manifested in the northern desert 4 days ago. Similar reports have come from Kumogakure, Darui added. The Raikage sent me to represent our interests in this matter, as it clearly affects all nations. And the 9th pillar? Hiashi Hyuga inquired, his stern gaze moving between Naruto and his daughter. You believe it will appear in Fire Country? Near Konoha specifically, Naruto confirmed. Soon. Within days, according to what I sensed through the connection. The timing correlates with astronomical observations, Orochimaru interjected smoothly, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to him with varying degrees of suspicion, but he continued unfazed. Ancient texts in my collection reference a celestial alignment, occurring every several millennia that thins the veil between worlds. The next such alignment begins in 3 days. You just happen to be researching this topic? Tsunade asked skeptically. A thin smile curved Orochimaru's lips. I research many obscure phenomena. As you well know, when reports of golden-eyed manifestations reached me, I consulted relevant texts. Regardless of how the information came to light, Kakashi intervened diplomatically. It gives us a time frame. If the 9th pillar appears during this alignment, and the entities Naruto encountered in the Land of Iron attempt to prevent the completion of the seal. Then we need to prepare for battle. Sasuke finished, pushing away from his pillar to approach the table. Against enemies unlike any we've faced before. Not just battle preparation, Naruto corrected. We need to identify the 9 individuals who will channel the sealing energy. I know I'm one of them, and Hinata is another. The rest will have specific chakra resonances that align with different aspects of the seal. How do we identify these individuals? Shikamaru asked practically. Naruto hesitated, then said, I think I can see it now, in the golden threads connecting everyone. Give me a moment. He activated the fuller aspect of his golden Sharringan, his perception expanding beyond normal vision to see the intricate web of connections linking everyone in the room. Most threads re the standard golden filaments he'd grown accustomed to seeing, but certain connections stood out, resonating with unique frequencies that aligned with patterns he'd observed in the pillars. Sasuke, he said immediately, unsurprised. Your Sharringan and experience with dimensional techniques make you essential. The thread connecting them pulsed with complex energy, rivalry, brotherhood, shared pain, and mutual respect woven together. Gaara, he continued, noting how the former Jinchuriki's presence created distinctive patterns in the golden web. Your connection to Shukaku has altered your chakra in ways that align with one aspect of the seal. One by one, Naruto identified others. Shikamaru, whose shadow manipulation techniques resonated with the boundary between light and darkness. Sakura, whose precise chakra control and healing abilities represented restoration and balance. And surprisingly, Orochimaru, whose unorthodox research and transformations had created unique energy signatures. That's 6, Tsunade noted. You said 9 are needed. Naruto frowned in concentration. The remaining 3, I don't think they're in this room. But I can sense connections reaching outward, toward. He turned, facing east. One is approaching Konoha now. Someone with a profound connection to natural energy. That would be me, I suppose, came a voice from the doorway. Heads turned, to see a figure silhouetted against the light from the hallway, tall, white-haired, with distinctive red markings on his face. Pervy Sage, Naruto gasped, shock momentarily overwhelming his expanded senses. You're alive. Jiraiya stepped fully into the room, his familiar grin somewhat tempered by the gravity of the situation. Reports of my death were somewhat exaggerated. Or perhaps premature would be more accurate. How? Tsunade demanded, her face pale as if seeing a ghost. A story for another time. Jiraiya deflected, his gaze fixed on Naruto's transformed eyes. The short version is that my battle with pain left me in a state between life and death. I've spent years recovering in a sacred realm accessible only to the Toad Sages, where time flows differently. When the boundaries between realms began weakening, I found myself able to return, and sensing that my particular expertise might be needed. He approached Naruto, studying him with experienced eyes. The golden Sharringan, he murmured. Legends among the Toad Sages mentioned such a thing, though they considered it merely metaphorical. Trust you to make mythology manifest, kid. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Naruto felt joy surge through him. The mentor he'd mourned stood before him, alive and whole. He stepped forward and embraced Jiraiya fiercely, golden energy briefly flaring around them both. Easy there, Jiraiya chuckled, returning the embrace before stepping back. I see your control over this power is still developing. You know about it? Naruto asked. Fragments, pieces of ancient lore, Jiraiya admitted. Enough to recognize it, not enough to explain it. But I've brought scrolls from Mount Myoboku that might help. Kakashi cleared his throat. While this reunion is certainly unexpected and welcome, we still have pressing matters to address. Naruto, you mentioned 2 more individuals needed for this seal. Naruto nodded, reluctantly returning his focus to the task at hand. Yes, one feels distant, but approaching. The other, he frowned, concentrating harder. The other is actually in the village already, but their signature is muted, as if they don't yet realize their potential. Can you locate them? Hiashi asked. I think so, Naruto replied. The threads lead in specific directions. Then that becomes our immediate priority, Kakashi decided. Find these individuals while we prepare for the appearance of the 9th pillar. Shikamaru, coordinate with our allies from other villages on defensive preparations. Sasuke, work with Orochimaru to analyze what we know about these interdimensional entities and potential countermeasures. What about the villagers? Tsunade asked. If we're facing a threat of this magnitude, should we consider evacuation? A heavy silence fell over the room. Evacuation of Konoha had only occurred during the most dire circumstances in the village's history. Not yet, Kakashi said finally. We don't know the exact location where the ninth pillar will appear. Moving civilians might actually place them in greater danger if we guess wrong. Instead, we'll prepare emergency protocols and shelter locations within the village. I'll coordinate medical preparations, Tsunade volunteered. If these entities cause effects similar to what was reported in the Land of Iron, we should be ready for unique symptoms. As the meeting continued, plans taking shape with the efficiency born of years of crisis management, Naruto found his attention repeatedly drawn to the east, towards something approaching that resonated strongly with the sealing energy. Whoever or whatever it was, they would arrive soon. You sense something specific, Hinata observed quietly, noticing his distraction. Someone's coming, Naruto confirmed. Someone powerful, with chakra unlike anything I've felt before. Not hostile, but different. Should we intercept them? She asked. Naruto shook his head. No, they're coming deliberately, aware of what's happening. We should prepare to receive them here. As the strategy session concluded, assignments distributed and teams formed, Naruto found himself momentarily alone with Jiraiya. The older Shinobi. I studied him with a mixture of pride and concern. This power has chosen you for a reason, Jiraiya said quietly. But it comes with great responsibility and risk. I know, Naruto replied. But I don't have a choice, do I? If these boundaries fail, everything we know could be destroyed. Jiraiya placed a hand on his shoulder. There are always choices, Naruto. Even when the path seems predetermined. What matters is approaching them with clear eyes and an open heart. He grinned suddenly. Speaking of which, I noticed how the Hyuga girl stays close to you. Have you finally realized what's been obvious to everyone else for years? Naruto felt heat rise to his face despite the seriousness of their situation. It's complicated. It always is, Jiraiya laughed. But some threads connect people for a reason. Even I can see that one without golden eyes. Before Naruto could respond, Kakashi called him over to discuss next steps. The personal would have to wait. Their world faced an existential threat. And time was running short. Dawn broke over Konoha in pale lavender hues, the village stirring to life with an undercurrent of tension. Word had spread, not of the full situation, but that citizens sensed something significant was unfolding. Extra patrols moved through the streets, and shinobi from various clans had been recalled from missions. Naruto stood atop the Hokage monument. Gazing out over the village as golden threads of connection illuminated his vision. From this vantage point, he could see patterns forming across the landscape, subtle distortions in reality's fabric that ordinary eyes would miss. The eighth pillar manifested overnight, came Sasuke's voice as his former rival joined him on the mountainside. Near the Valley of End, Kakashi sent a team to secure the area. Naruto nodded, unsurprised. I felt it. The network is nearly complete. And the ninth, soon, very soon. Naruto turned to face Sasuke directly. How are you handling all this? It's a lot to take in. Even by our standards. Sasuke's expression remained impassive, but the golden thread connecting them revealed deeper emotions, concern, determination, and a touch of something might have been fear in someone less disciplined. After Kagaya, I stopped believing anything was impossible, Sasuke replied simply. Interdimensional threats, divine eyes, just another day for Team 7. The attempt at dry humor drew a smile from Naruto. Fair point. The real question, Sasuke continued more seriously, is how you're handling it. These powers, this responsibility, it's changing you. Naruto looked down at his hands, observing the faint golden glow that sometimes emanated from his skin during moments of deep concentration. I'm still me, he said after a moment. Just seeing more now. Understanding connections that were always there but invisible before. And after, Sasuke pressed. If we succeed in this sealing, what happens to you? Do these powers fade, or do you remain different? It was a question Naruto had avoided asking himself. I don't know, he admitted. The keeper didn't say. Maybe there is no after. For me, at least not returning to what I was before. Sasuke was silent for a long moment, then said quietly, whatever happens, you won't face it alone. The simple statement, coming from someone who had spent years embracing solitude, carried profound weight. The golden thread between them strengthened, two destinies intertwined since childhood continuing their parallel journey. Thanks, Naruto said simply. That matters more than you know. Their conversation was interrupted by a flare of chakra from the village, a signal from one of the perimeter sentries. Something was approaching. The presence I've been sensing, Naruto realized. They're here. Together, they descended from the monument, arriving at the village gates just as a small procession approached from the eastern forest. Leading them was a figure Naruto recognized. Immediately despite having met her only once before, tall and elegant, with flowing green hair and eyes that reflected ancient wisdom. Lady Amaya, he greeted, bowing respectfully. The woman returned the gesture, her penetrating gaze taking in his transformed eyes. Guardian, she replied, the divine threads have connected us again, as was foretold. Amaya was the high priestess of the Fire Temple, keeper of knowledge that predated the founding of the hidden villages. Naruto had encountered her 3 years earlier during a mission to protect ancient scrolls from rogue shinobi. Even then, she had hinted at destinies yet to unfold. Behind her came 4 temple acolytes carrying a large wooden chest, and beside them walked a woman Naruto didn't recognize, younger than Amaya, perhaps in her mid-20s. With striking amber eyes and dark hair streaked with silver, she moved with the fluid grace of a trained shinobi, though she wore no village insignia. You bring something for us, Naruto said, sensing the golden threads that connected intensely to the wooden chest. Amaya nodded. Artifacts from the last time the boundaries thinned, 3,000 years ago. They may aid in your understanding of what is to come. She gestured to her companion. And I bring Kira, who is bound to this ceiling whether she wishes it or not. The silver-streaked woman, Kira, stepped forward, her amber eyes narrowed slightly as she studied Naruto. So you're the one with the golden eyes, she said, her voice carrying a subtle accent Naruto couldn't place. I've been having visions of you for weeks. Quite annoying, actually. Kira is a descendant of the Void Hands, Amaya explained, ignoring her companion's blunt manner. An ancient order tasked with monitoring disturbances between realms. Few of their bloodline remain. But the calling still manifests in times of need. I didn't ask for this calling, Kira muttered. Was perfectly happy hunting bounties in the borderlands until the dreams started. Despite her complaint, Naruto sensed no real resistance in her, just caution and perhaps a touch of defensive humor. You're one of the 9, Naruto said, seeing clearly now the distinctive resonance in her chakra signature. Your energy aligns with a specific aspect of the seal we need to create. So I've been told, Kira replied dryly. Repeatedly. By voices in my dreams, by Lady Amaya here, and by every strange occurrence that's driven me toward Konoha like a moth to flame. Kakashi arrived with several Anbu escorts, greeting the newcomers with diplomatic courtesy. Lady Amaya, it's been many years. Your assistance is most welcome in these unusual circumstances. The Fire Temple stands with Konoha, as always, Amaya replied formally. These artifacts should be secured immediately. They contain knowledge that could be dangerous in the wrong hands. As arrangements were made to transport the wooden chest to a secure location within the Hokage Tower, Naruto found himself studying Kira more closely. The golden threads around her had an unusual quality, darker than most, almost bronze rather than gold, and moving in distinctive patterns that suggested affinity with shadows and boundaries. You're staring, she pointed out bluntly. Is it the hair, the eyes, or just the general aura of reluctant mystical destiny I'm apparently radiating? Sorry, Naruto said, slightly abashed. I'm still getting used to seeing people's connections. Yours are different. Story of my life, Kira sighed. Always the odd one out. At least this time I'm not the only freak with weird eyes. She nodded toward his golden irises with something that might have been camaraderie. Despite her abrasive manner, Naruto found himself liking her directness. Welcome to Konoha, anyway. Things are a bit chaotic at the moment. As you can probably tell. End of the world tends to cause that, she replied with dark humor. Or beginning of a new one, depending on how this plays out. Before Naruto could respond, Hinata appeared, approaching from the direction of the Hokage Tower. Naruto-kun, the artifacts are being prepared for examination. Jiraiya-sama believes some of the scrolls may contain sealing techniques relevant to our situation. Her gaze shifted to Kira, taking in the newcomer with quiet assessment. You must be one of the individuals Naruto sensed approaching. That's me, reluctant chosen one number 8. Apparently, Kira introduced herself with a mock bow. Kira of nowhere in particular. Hinata smiled gently, unperturbed by the other woman's manner. I'm Hinata Hyuga. We're grateful for your arrival, regardless of the circumstances that brought you here. Something in Hinata's genuine welcome seemed to soften Kira's defensive edge slightly. Well, at least someone around here has manners, she commented, though without real bite. So, what's next in this cosmic drama? Dramatic revelations, training montage, last-minute crisis, all of the above, probably, Naruto replied with a wry smile. But first, let's see what's in those artifacts. Knowledge is our best weapon right now. The ancient scrolls and artifacts from the Fire Temple proved both illuminating and concerning. Spread across a large table in a secure room within the Hokage Tower, they painted a picture of previous incursions from beyond the boundaries, events mostly lost to conventional history but preserved in temple records. 3,000 years ago, Jiraiya explained, translating one particularly elaborate scroll, entities similar to what Naruto encountered in the Land of Iron breached the boundaries in multiple locations. They're described as void walkers, or hollow ones, beings that exist in the spaces between realities. According to this account, Tsunade added, examining another document, they caused reality distortions wherever they manifested, whether anomalies, time fluctuations, living things developing unusual characteristics. Like the golden markings on affected individuals in the Land of Iron, Sakura noted. Precisely, Amaya confirmed. The markings are actually a defensive response, the human body attempting to adapt to exposure to interdimensional energy. Naruto leaned forward, studying a faded illustration that depicted 9 figures surrounding a central pillar, golden light emanating from their hands to form a complex sealing pattern. This is it, he said. The 9-fold seal we need to create. The boundary restoration, Amaya named it. A technique that draws on 9 different aspects of chakra to reinforce the walls between worlds. Can we perform this with our current knowledge of sealing techniques? Kakashi asked practically. Jiraiya shook his head. Not as described here. The complexity exceeds anything in modern sealing arts. We'd need. He trailed off, looking at Naruto speculatively. Someone who can see and manipulate the connections directly, Naruto finished. That's why the golden Sharringan awakened now. It allows perception and control of the fundamental threads that compose the boundaries. So the plan remains the same, Sasuke concluded. Find the 9th individual for the sealing circle, locate where the final pillar will manifest. And prepare to activate this seal when the time comes. While defending against entities that will try to stop us, Shikamaru added. Troublesome doesn't begin to cover it. Kira, who had been silently examining a small metal artifact shaped like a compass, suddenly spoke up. The 9th isn't a person, exactly. All eyes turned to her in surprise. At least, not in the conventional sense. Explain, Kakashi prompted. This is a void compass, she said, holding up the artifact. It points toward disturbances in the boundaries. But it also resonates with those connected to the ceiling. She spun it in her palm, and the needle rotated before stopping, pointing directly at Naruto. She spun it again with the same result, then a third time, but on this attempt, he needle split into 9 separate points, each indicating a different direction. 8 of these point to people in or near Konoha, she continued. She nodded to Naruto, the Hyuga girl, the brooding Uchiha, the Toad Sage, the Shadow User, the pink-haired medic, the Sand Controller, the Snake Man, and myself. And the 9th? Gaara inquired. Points to the northwest, toward the mountains, Kira replied. But it doesn't feel human. More like an entity. Something ancient and patient. A chill ran through the room at her words. Could it be another of these interdimensional beings? Tsunade asked with concern. No, Naruto said suddenly, certainty filling him as golden threads of knowledge connected in his mind. It's the 9 tails, or part of him, at least. Kurama, Sakura looked confused. But he's sealed within you. Not entirely, Naruto explained. After the war, when Kurama and I reached a new understanding, he asked for part of his chakra to be released, not enough to form a full body, but a portion of his consciousness. He's been residing in a sacred grove in the mountains, meditating on his long existence. We've remained connected, but he's been finding himself, I guess you could say. The tailed beasts are themselves boundaries between realms in a way, Jiraiya noted thoughtfully. Created from the 10 tails, which came from beyond our world originally. It makes a certain cosmic sense that Kurama would be part of this. Then we need to contact him immediately, Kakashi decided. If the 9th pillar will manifest soon. A sudden tremor shook the tower. Items rattling on shelves and dust drifting from the ceiling. It lasted only seconds but left an unmistakable sense of wrongness in its wake. That wasn't a natural earthquake, Sasuke observed, Sharringan activating instinctively. Naruto's golden Sharringan flared in response, his perception expanding outward through the golden threads. What he saw sent a chill through him. The boundaries are thinning more rapidly. That tremor was reality itself shuddering as something pushes against it from the other side. No sooner had he spoken than a Chunin messenger burst into the room. Hokage-sama, strange phenomena reported at the village perimeter, lights in the sky, unusual chakra readings, and, he hesitated, as if doubting his own words, some villagers claiming to see things that shouldn't be there. Faces in the shadows, objects moving on their own. It's starting, Amaya said gravely. The veil grows thin enough for glimpses between worlds. We need to move quickly, Naruto decided, standing. I'll go to Kurama immediately. The 9th pillar will manifest near him, I can feel it. Not alone, Hinata said firmly, rising to join him. I'll go too, Sasuke added. If entities atta, CK during your meeting with the 9 tails, you'll need support. Kakashi nodded agreement. Take Kira as well. Her void compass may prove useful in pinpointing the exact location. The silver-streaked woman shrugged. Pocketing the ancient artifact. Why not? I've come this far following mysterious compulsions. Might as well see it through. The rest of us will prepare the village, Shikamaru said, already outlining plans. Defensive perimeters, evacuation protocols, medical teams on standby. And I'll continue translating these scrolls, Jiraiya added. There may be more specific information about the sealing technique we'll need. Quote, as they moved to depart, another tremor shook the building, stronger this time, accompanied by a sound like distant glass breaking. Through his golden Sharringan, Naruto saw golden threads across the village briefly distort, stretching and twisting before snapping back into place. We're running out of time, he said grimly. Let's move. The journey to Kurama's sacred grove took them northwest into the mountains that bordered Fire Country. As they traveled, signs of disturbance in the natural world became increasingly evident, animals behaving erratically. Plants growing in impossible patterns, occasional shimmering in the air like heat mirages. Reality is becoming unstable, Kira observed as they passed a stream flowing uphill against gravity. They've seen similar phenomena near boundary disturbances, but never this widespread. The void compass, Sasuke prompted. Kira checked the ancient device, which pulsed with soft golden light. Still pointing northwest, and getting more active. We're heading in the right direction. Naruto led them upward along a nearly invisible path that wound through increasingly dense forest. The trees here were ancient. Their massive trunks covered with moss and lichen that seemed to glow faintly in the dappled sunlight. How much further? Hinata asked, Byakugan active as she scanned their surroundings. Not far, Naruto replied. The grove is hidden behind natural genjutsu, an effect of Kurama's chakra interacting with the spiritual energy of this mountain. Most people would walk right past it, their minds subtly redirected elsewhere. But you can see through it, Sasuke noted. Naruto nodded. Even before the golden Sharringan, my connection to Kurama allowed me to find him. Now, he gestured to the golden threads visible only to him, which converged ahead like a luminous path. It's impossible to miss. They crested a ridge and found themselves facing what appeared to be a solid rock face covered in vines. To ordinary vision, there was nothing remarkable about it, just another feature of the mountain landscape. Through here, Naruto said, approaching the rock face without hesitation. There's no passage, Kira pointed out skeptically. There is, Hinata countered, her Byakugan penetrating the illusion. A narrow tunnel beyond the genjutsu. Naruto placed his hand against the seemingly solid stone, channeling a small amount of chakra infused with Kurama's distinctive energy. The illusion rippled and parted like a curtain, revealing a low tunnel entrance. Stay close, he instructed. The genjutsu will try to redirect anyone not keyed to Kurama's chakra. Single file, they entered the passage, which wound downward into the mountain. The air grew warmer as they descended, carrying scents of rich earth and unfamiliar flowering plants. After several minutes of careful progress, the tunnel opened suddenly into a vast cavern that defied expectations. Instead of darkness, they found themselves in what appeared to be an outdoor grove bathed in sunlight, though they were clearly still underground. Massive trees with luminous leaves stretched toward a ceiling that shimmered like the sky. A small lake reflected this false firmament, its waters crystal clear. Throughout the grove, plants from diverse ecosystems grew side by side in impossible harmony, desert cacti alongside tropical orchids, alpine lichen next to coastal mangroves. And at the center, curled in meditation, was Kurama, or rather, a manifestation of him roughly the size of a large horse rather than the towering form of the full 9 tails. His 9 tails moved slowly in a hypnotic pattern, and his eyes remained closed in deep concentration. This place, Hinata breathed, wonder evident in her voice. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Kurama's ears twitched at their approach, though his eyes remained closed. You've brought guests, Naruto, the fox rumbled, his voice carrying the deep resonance of an ancient being despite his reduced size. And you've changed since last we met. A lot has changed, Naruto replied, stepping forward to greet his former tenant. The world needs your help, Kurama. The 9 tails' eyes opened slowly, crimson irises fixing immediately on Naruto's transformed golden gaze. For a long moment, the two simply regarded each other in silence, a wordless communication passing between them. The golden Sharringan, Kurama finally said, rising to his full height, still modest compared to his true form, but imposing nonetheless. I sensed its awakening like a ripple across the boundaries. The old legends were true. It seems. You know of this power? Sasuke asked sharply. Kurama's gaze shifted to the Uchiha, a mixture of ancient wariness and reluctant respect in his expression. I am thousands of years old, Uchiha. I have witnessed much that has been forgotten by human memory. His attention returned to Naruto. The thinning boundaries, the anchor pillars, the threat that stirs beyond. These are why you've come. Yes, Naruto confirmed. You're part of the ninefold seal, Kurama. The 9th aspect needed to complete it. The fox made a sound that might have been a laugh. Ironic. The 9 tails is the 9th component. The universe has a peculiar sense of humor. He stretched, tails swaying behind him. I've felt the disturbances growing stronger each day. This sanctuary exists partially between realms, which makes the effects more noticeable here. The 9th pillar will manifest nearby, Naruto explained. Soon. When it does, we'll need to activate the seal immediately. And the other 8 components? Kurama inquired, looking at the companions Naruto had brought. Most are preparing in Konoha, Naruto replied. Each aligned with a different aspect of the seal. Hinata's Byakugan represents pure sight, perceiving truth beyond illusion. Sasuke's Sharringan and dimensional abilities embody transition between states. Kira here, he gestured to the silver-streaked woman, carries the blood of boundary wardens, those who have guarded the veil for generations. Kurama studied Kira with interest. Void hands, he recognized. Few of your kind remain. I knew some of your ancestors. Centuries ago. Lucky them, Kira replied dryly, though she couldn't entirely hide her fascination with the 9 tails. So, you're the 9th piece of this cosmic puzzle. So it would seem, Kurama acknowledged. My chakra has always existed partially beyond normal dimensions, a legacy of my origin from the 10 tails. He turned his attention back to Naruto. The Nint H pillar will appear at the boundary of this grove where it intersects most closely with your world. I've sensed its approach for days. As if in response to his words, a low vibration began to resonate through the cavern. The false sky above rippled like disturbed water, colors bleeding into one another. Plants throughout the grove swayed despite the absence of wind. It begins, Kurama stated, rising to all fours. Follow me. They moved through the impossible garden, passing wonders that would have merited hours of exploration under normal circumstances, trees bearing fruit that glowed from within. Flowers that changed color as they approached, small creatures unlike any in the natural world that watched them with intelligent eyes. Kurama created all this, Hinata asked quietly as they walked. Shaped it, rather than created. Naruto explained. This pocket dimension existed as a natural thin spot between realms. Kurama found it and molded it using his chakra, bringing aspects of D.F.F. errant environments together in one space. It's beautiful, she said simply. Beauty born from centuries of rage and isolation, Kurama commented from ahead, his acute hearing having caught their conversation. When given freedom after so long in darkness, I found I craved creation rather than destruction. They reached what appeared to be the edge of the grove, where the carefully tended garden gave way to raw stone. The boundary between Kurama's sanctuary and the natural cave system was marked by a line of glowing moss that pulsed with subtle energy. Here, the 9 tails indicated, stopping at this threshold. The 9th pillar will manifest where the boundaries already overlap. No sooner had he spoken than another tremor shook the cavern, stronger than before. Dust and small stones rained from the ceiling as the false sky above darkened, swirling with unnatural colors. The line of moss flared brilliantly, then began to recede, creating a perfect circle approximately 10 meters in diameter. Within this circle, reality itself seemed to fold inward, space distorting as if viewed through warped glass. A low humming filled the air, building in intensity until it became almost painful. Then, with a sound like thunder contained in a small space, a pillar of stone emerged from the distortion, identical to those Naruto had seen at the other sites. The 9th anchor, he confirmed. Golden eyes perceiving the complex web of connections immediately forming between this pillar and the others spread across the world. The circle is complete. Hira's void compass spun wildly in her hand before shattering into dust that scattered across the stone floor. Well, that's not ominous at all, she muttered. Hinata activated her Byakugan, then gasped softly. The chakra patterns, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Layers upon layers, connecting outward beyond my range of vision. The 9-fold seal is ready to be activated, Kurama stated, approaching the pillar cautiously. But we cannot complete it here. With only 4 of the 9 components present. We need to bring the pillar to Konoha, Sasuke concluded, studying the stone column with his Sharringan. Or find a way to connect all 9 pillars simultaneously from separate locations. Naruto shook his head. Neither is possible. The pillars are fixed at points where the boundaries naturally thin. They can't be moved. He frowned in concentration, golden threads forming connections in his mind. But there might be another way. If I can use the golden Sharringan to project our presence to all 9 pillars simultaneously. Before he could elaborate, a familiar cold sensation washed over him, the same feeling he'd experienced just before the entity attacked in the Land of Iron. Something's coming, he warned sharply. Everyone, be ready. The air near the pillar rippled and tore like fabric being ripped apart. Through the resulting gap came not one entity, but 3, each similar to what Naruto had encountered before. But larger and more defined. Their forms still defied proper description, composed of angles and shadows that hurt to look at directly, but now features could be distinguished, limb-like appendages, core masses, and void-like apertures that might have been sensory organs. Void walkers, Hira named them, drawing twin short swords from sheaths at her back. 3 at once, that's not good. Kurama's tails lashed aggressively, chakra building around his form. They seek to destroy the pillar before the seal can be activated. The entities moved with that same unnatural motion Naruto remembered, flowing rather than walking across the cavern floor. Where they passed, plants withered and stone cracked, reality itself seeming to recoil from their presence. Protect the pillar, Naruto ordered, already moving to intercept the nearest entity. His golden Sharringan flared as he gathered the golden threads around himself, weaving them into the same kind of binding net he'd attempted before, but stronger now. More intricately patterned with his increased understanding. Sasuke engaged the second entity, Sharringan spinning as he unleashed a controlled blast of fire that the creature seemed to absorb without effect. Adapting immediately, he switched to lightning release, channeling Chidori through his sword as he slashed at the being's amorphous form. This produced results. The entity recoiled as the lightning disrupted its cohesion, emitting that same glass-shattering sound Naruto had heard before. Electricity affects them, Sasuke called out, pressing his advantage with another lightning-infused strike. Hinata and Kira faced the third entity together, the Hyuga heiress moving with the precise grace of the gentle fist while Kira's twin blades traced complex patterns through the air. To Naruto's surprise, Kira's weapons left trails of darkness behind them, not shadow manipulation like Shikamaru's techniques, but something more fundamental, as if she were cutting through reality itself. Void blades, Kurama recognized, his voice carrying over the chaos as he gathered natural energy from his sanctuary. Weapons forged to affect that which exists between dimensions. Entities fought with increasing coordination, their initial assault giving way to more strategic movements. They attempted to flank the defenders, clearly prioritizing access to the pillar above all else. Naruto's golden bindings wrapped around his opponent, temporarily constraining it, but the entity seemed stronger than the one he'd faced before. It twisted against the golden threads, distorting ons forming in the air around it as it sought escape. They're learning, Naruto realized aloud. Adapting to our techniques. Then we adapt faster, Sasuke replied grimly, shifting tactics again. He activated his Mangekyo Sharringan. Black flames of Amaterasu engulfing the entity he faced. Unlike conventional fire, these flames that burned anything seemed to find purchase on the interdimensional being, consuming its edges even as it tried to withdraw from them. Kurama, who had been gathering power, chose this moment to strike. A concentrated beam of tailed beast energy, smaller than his usual attacks but more precisely focused, lanced toward the entity struggling against Naruto's bindings. It struck with devastating effect, the being's form rupturing where the pure chakra pierced it. A disc. Ordant shriek filled the cavern as the entity thrashed in what appeared to be genuine pain. The golden threads holding it suddenly found better purchase, tightening as Naruto refined the binding pattern based on what he'd learned from its reactions. That's it, he called to the others. They're vulnerable to pure chakra attacks, techniques that affect the energy flow itself rather than physical matter. Hinata immediately adjusted her approach, her gentle fist strikes targeting specific points in the entity's form where her Byakugan detected concentrations of the strange energy that animated it. Each successful hit caused the creature to distort further, its unnatural geometries faltering. Kira's void blades continued to slice through the entity's substance, each cut separating portions that dissolved into nothingness. They're not dying, she warned, ducking beneath a lashing appendage. They're being pulled back to their own realm when damaged enough, which means they can return. The battle continued with increasing intensity, the defenders slowly gaining advantage as they refined their techniques based on observed effectiveness. Sasuke's Amaterasu consumed large portions of one entity, while Kurama's precise chakra beams disrupted another's cohesion. Hinata and Kira worked in seamless coordination, the Hyuga's precision and the Void Hand's specialized weapons complementing each other perfectly. Naruto, meanwhile, had succeeded in fully binding his opponent. The golden threads now formed a complex three-dimensional seal around the entity, patterns reminiscent of those on the pillar itself. With a final surge of concentration, he closed the binding, compressing the trapped being until it emitted one last shriek before collapsing into itself and vanishing. One down, he called, immediately moving to assist the others. The remaining entities, seemingly recognizing their disadvantage, changed tactics. One disengaged from combat entirely, flowing directly toward the pillar with single-minded purpose. The other intensified its attacks, appendages lashing out with increased speed and force. The pillar, Hinata shouted in warning. Kurama reacted instantly, leaping between the entity and its target. Multiple tails lashed forward, each charged with concentrated chakra that sliced through the Void Walker's form like superheated wire through ice. The creature fragmented, pieces of its impossible geometry falling away before dissolving. The final entity, still engaged with Sasuke, suddenly expanded its form in all directions simultaneously, a desperate tactic that caught them by surprise. Darkness engulfed a portion of the cavern as the being seemed to transform from a discrete entity into an environment itself. Within this darkness, normal physical laws faltered. Gravity shifted unpredictably, sound distorted, and the golden threads in Naruto's vision twisted into painful configurations. It's creating a pocket dimension, Kurama snarled, his voice seaman. G to come from multiple directions at once, trying to separate us from the pillar by pulling this section of reality into its own realm. Not happening, Naruto growled, his golden Sharringan blazing, as he thrust both hands into the encroaching darkness. Rather than fighting the entity directly, he focused on the boundaries of its expanding influence, using the golden threads to reinforce normal reality against the intrusion. Sasuke, can you see me? He called into the disorienting space. Barely, came the response, Sasuke's voice distorted but recognizable. It's like being inside a genjutsu that affects physical space. Then break it like one, Naruto suggested. Disrupt the chakra patterns maintaining it. Understanding immediately, Sasuke activated his Rinnegan, its unique Perceptu Al abilities cutting through the dimensional distortions. With precise application of his own chakra, he identified the focal points where the entity anchored its manifestation to their reality. There, he called, directing a precisely calibrated Chidori at a point that appeared to be empty space but represented a critical junction in the entity's structure. The darkness convulsed as Sasuke's attack struck home. Hinata, who had maintained her Byakugan throughout despite the strain, identified additional weak points that became visible as the entity reacted. 3 more nexus points, she called out, marking their locations with small bursts of chakra that glowed like beacons in the darkness. Kira and Kurama struck simultaneously, void blades and tailed beast chakra targeting these vulnerabilities with coordinated precision. The entity's hold on the space faltered, its manufactured pocket dimension collapsing inward. With a final, concerted effort, Naruto gathered the golden threads around the failing entity and wove them into a binding seal, not just constraining but actively unraveling its structure. The darkness receded rapidly, normal reality reasserting itself as the void walk. Compressed into an impossibly small point before vanishing entirely. Silence fell over the cavern, broken only by their heavy breathing and the occasional crackle of residual energy. The battle had lasted mere minutes but had transformed parts of Kurama's sanctuary, plants withered, stone surfaces etched with alien patterns, the false sky above still swirling with unnatural colors. Is everyone all right? Naruto asked, quickly checking his companions. Functional, Sasuke replied tersely, though a thin trail of blood ran from his left eye, evidence of Rinnegan overuse. I'm okay, Hinata confirmed, deactivating her Byakugan to relieve the strain. Though I wouldn't want to face more of those immediately. Same, Kira agreed, sheathing her void blades with hands that trembled slightly from exertion. Those were stronger than any void walkers I've encountered in my admittedly limited experience. Kurama padded to the pillar, examining it carefully. The 9th anchor remains intact, he reported. But this attack confirms what we suspected. The enemy sends its servants specifically to prevent the sealing. And they'll send more, Naruto added grimly. Stronger ones, now that these have failed. Then we have no time to waste, Sasuke concluded. We need to activate the 9-fold seal before a larger incursion occurs. Naruto approached the pillar, placing one hand against its stone surface. The inscriptions glowed in response to his touch, golden light flowing through the ancient symbols. Through his enhanced perception, he could see how this pillar connected to the other threads of golden energy stretching across vast distances to form an intricate web. I can link them, he said after a moment of concentration. Create a temporary connection that will allow all components of the seal to work together without being physically present at each pillar. How? Hinata asked. The golden Sharringan lets me perceive and manipulate the threads that connect everything, Naruto explained. Distance is less relevant to these connections than we might think. I can essentially fold space between the pillars, bringing them into temporary alignment. That would require enormous chakra, Kurama noted with concern. Even for you, with your reserves and my lingering influence, such a technique would be extremely taxing. We don't have a choice, Naruto replied simply. We need to return to Konoha immediately and gather the others. The sooner we activate the seal, the better our chances of success. As they prepared to depart, Kurama reduced his form further, shrinking to the size of a large fox that could move more easily through the mountain tunnels. I will accompany you, he stated, 9 tails now proportionally smaller but still distinctive. My sanctuary is compromised, and my presence will be required for the sealing regardless. They left the grove through a different passage than they had entered, a more direct route to the surface that Kurama revealed. As they emerged onto the mountainside, they were greeted by an ominous sight. The sky above Konoha in the distance was discolored, swirling patterns of unnatural light visible even from miles away. The veil thins more rapidly. Kurama observed grimly. The arrival of the ninth pillar has accelerated the process. Then we move faster, Naruto decided, setting a pace that would push their endurance to the limit. Every moment counted now, with the fate of their world hanging in the balance. They arrived at Konoha to find the village in a state of controlled emergency. The unnatural phenomena had intensified during their absence, buildings occasionally phasing partly out of reality before returning, objects moving against gravity, and most concerning, civilians reporting visions of landscapes and beings that didn't belong in their world. Kakashi met them at the gates, his normally calm demeanor strained by the situation. The disturbances are increasing exponentially, he reported without preamble. Tsunade has established medical stations throughout the village to treat those affected by exposure to whatever is leaking through the boundaries. His visible eye widened HTLY at the sight of Kurama padding alongside Naruto, but he recovered quickly. Nine Tails, your assistance is appreciated. Save your diplomacy, Hatake, Kurama rumbled. We have more pressing concerns than historical grievances. The ninth pillar has manifested, Naruto informed the Hokage. And we were attacked immediately by entities trying to destroy it, stronger ones than I encountered in the Land of Iron. Similar attacks have occurred here, Kakashi confirmed, leading them swiftly toward the village center. Two of those, Void Walkers, manifested near the Hokage monument an hour ago. Jiraiya and Gaara managed to repel them, but not without difficulty. We need to gather everyone involved in the sealing immediately, Sasuke stated. Naruto believes he can create a connection between all nine pillars. Already in progress, Kakashi replied. Shikamaru anticipated your return and has assembled the others at Training Ground Zero. Training Ground Zero was the designation for a specially reinforced area near the center of the village, designed for testing high-level techniques without risk to surrounding structures. As they approached, Naruto could see preparations already underway. A large ceiling array drawn on the ground, stations positioned at precise intervals around its circumference, and familiar figures making final adjustments. Shikamaru looked up at their arrival, relief briefly crossing his features. Finally, things are deteriorating faster than projected. We noticed, Kira commented dryly, eyeing the disturbing ripples visible in the air throughout the training ground. Nice to see you've been busy while we were fighting interdimensional horrors. Introductions were brief as the final participants assembled. Jiraiya, Gaara, Sakura, Orochimaru, and Shikamaru joined Naruto, Sasuke, Hinata, Kira, and Kurama to form the 9 components of the seal. Each took their position at one of the stations around the array, guided by Naruto's instructions. Based on what he perceived through the golden Sharringan, the seal must align with specific aspects of chakra, he explained, moving between positions to make fine adjustments. Each of you represents an element or quality needed for the boundary reinforcement. What exactly will this seal do? Sakura asked as she took her assigned place. It will strengthen the natural boundaries between realms. Amaya answered from where she observed the preparations alongside Kakashi and Tsunade. Restore what has been damaged by recent events and create a more resilient barrier against future incursions. And the process? Jiraiya inquired, studying the complex array beneath their feet with expert eyes. This design incorporates elements I've never seen before. I'll establish connections to all 9 pillars simultaneously. Naruto explained. Each of you will channel your specific chakra through these connections, following my guidance. The seal will manifest at each pillar, creating a 9-fold reinforcement of the boundaries. And the risks? Orochimaru asked with clinical interest. Such techniques typically come with significant costs. A brief silence fell as all eyes turned to Naruto. Substantial chakra depletion for everyone involved, he admitted. And for me, I'm not entirely sure. Maintaining connections across such distances while coordinating 9 different chakra signatures will be challenging. You mean potentially fatal, Sasuke translated bluntly. Naruto didn't deny it. The alternative is the continued degradation of the boundaries until they fail completely. The consequences of that would be far worse than any risk to us. No one argued the point. They had all faced death before in service to their world. This was merely another such moment, albeit on a grander scale. How do we begin? Gaara asked practically. Form the initial connections, Naruto instructed, moving to the center of the array. Each of you, channel chakra into the seal mark at your station. I'll use that energy to establish the links to the pillars. As the others complied, Naruto closed his eyes, focusing entirely on his golden Sharingan's perception. The golden threads that connected all things became his sole reality, a vast, intricate web extending outward in all directions. He could sense each pillar's location through these threads, feel the unique resonance of their ancient power. I see them, he murmured, raising his hands as golden energy began to flow visibly from his body. Now, I bring them together. What followed defied conventional description. To those observing, it appeared as if reality itself folded around Naruto, space distorting as golden light poured from his eyes and spread outward along the ceiling array. The 9 participants found themselves simultaneously present in the training ground and aware of the distant pillars, a dual perception that was disorienting but manageable under Naruto's guidance. Each pillar resonates with specific chakra, his voice instructed, somehow reaching them both physically and mentally. Feel which one calls to you and direct your energy there. One by one, they established these connections. Gaara felt his chakra drawn toward the pillar in the Wind Country Desert, his control over sand and his former connection to Shukaku creating natural affinity with its dry, patient power. Jiraiya's sage chakra flowed to a pillar hidden deep in a swamp, where natural energy gathered in unusual concentration. Sakura's precise healing energy connected to a pillar in the heart of Water Country, where life and renewal flourished. Each connection strengthened the overall pattern, golden threads interweaving into an increasingly complex seal that manifested simultaneously at all 9 locations. Through the golden Sharingan, Naruto coordinated these energies, ensuring proper alignment and flow. The process demanded incredible concentration and chakra control from all involved, but none more than Naruto himself. His body glowed with golden light so intense that the others could barely look directly at him. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he maintained the impossible connections across vast distances. His consciousness stretched to its absolute limits. The seal is forming, he managed through gritted teeth. But there's resistance, something pushing back against it. Almost immediately, they felt it, an opposing force pressing against their efforts, cold and alien and immensely powerful. The golden threads began to waver as something on the other side of the thinning boundaries recognized what they were attempting and moved to prevent it. The enemy, Kurama growled, his 9 tails lashing as he poured more chakra into his connection. It senses the seal's formation. The resistance intensified, targeting the weakest connections first. Sakura gasped as her link to the Water Country pillar wavered under the assault. Shikamaru's shadow-based connection flickered like a candle in wind. Hold steady, Naruto commanded, his voice strained but determined. I'll reinforce the connections, but I need everyone at maximum output. He redirected his own energy to shore up the faltering links, gold and light blazing along the array's patterns. The effort cost him visibly. Blood began to trickle from his nose and eyes as the strain exceeded even his enhanced capabilities. Naruto-kun, Hinata called in alarm, seeing his condition through her Byakugan. Don't break formation, he ordered. The seal is almost complete. We need to push through the resistance. The pressure from beyond the boundaries continued to mount, reality itself seeming to bend around them as 2 opposing forces contested for dominance. The sky above Konoha darkened unnaturally, and the ground beneath their feet trembled. Just as it seemed they might lose the struggle, Naruto made a decision. Drawing on the deepest reserves of his power, those awakened by the golden Sharingan but not yet fully explored, he opened himself completely to the golden threads that composed reality. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Golden light exploded outward from his form, his physical body temporarily becoming secondary to the pure energy he channeled. Through the connections already established, this power flowed to each of the 9 pillars simultaneously, overwhelming the resistance with sheer force of will. Now, he called, his voice resonating with authority that transcended normal human speech. Complete the seal. As one, the 9 components released their full power into the array. The golden threads crystallized into a permanent pattern, etching themselves into the fabric of reality at each pillar location. A shock wave of golden energy expanded outward from all 9 sites simultaneously, rippling across the world as the reinforced boundaries snapped back into proper alignment. For one breathtaking moment, they all perceived reality as Naruto did, countless golden threads connecting all things in an infinite, beautiful web. Then the vision faded, the seal's activation complete. The unnatural darkness above Konoha cleared, normal daylight returning. The distortions in the air stabilized and then disappeared. Throughout the village, and indeed, across the world, the strange phenomena caused by thinning boundaries ceased. At the center of the array, Naruto collapsed to his knees, the golden light surrounding him flickering like a candle about to go out. Blood streamed from his eyes and nose, and his breathing came in ragged gasps. Naruto. Multiple voices called his name as the formation broke, everyone rushing toward him. Hinata reached him first, catching him as he slumped forward. Sakura, she called urgently. He needs medical attention immediately. The pink-haired medic was already kneeling beside them. Green healing chakra flowing from her hands as she assessed his condition. Extreme chakra depletion, she reported tersely. Multiple pathway disruptions. His entire system is in shock. The seal, Naruto managed to ask, his voice barely audible. It worked, Jiraiya confirmed, crouching beside him. The boundaries are restored. You did it, kid. A faint smile touched Naruto's bloodied lips before his eyes rolled back and he lost consciousness entirely. We need to get him to the hospital now, Sakura ordered. His condition is critical. As they carefully moved Naruto's limp form, Kurama padded alongside. His expression unreadable but his 9 tails agitated. The golden Sharringan demanded more than even he could safely give, the fox observed quietly. The question now is whether he can recover, and what remains of him if he does. The ominous words hung in the air as they rushed toward the hospital, their victory tempered by the potential cost to the one who had made it possible. Darkness surrounded Naruto, but it was not the empty void of unconsciousness. Golden threads still permeated his perception, though dimmer now, flickering like dying embers. He had no sense of his physical body, existing solely as awareness drifting through the connections between realms. You succeeded, Guardian. The familiar presence of the Keeper manifested around him, its gall. Den energy providing anchor in the formless space. The ninefold seal is established. The boundaries are restored. At what cost? Naruto asked, his thoughts forming the words without need for voice. I can't feel my body. Your physical form endures, though greatly weakened, the Keeper assured him. You channeled far more power than was safe, extending yourself across all 9 pillars simultaneously. Few mortals could have survived such an effort. But I did survive, Naruto noted. Somehow, the golden Sharringan protects its vessel, the Keeper explained. It has integrated more deeply with your essence as a result of the strain. The changes begun at your awakening have accelerated. Alarm rippled through Naruto's consciousness. What does that mean? Am I still me? You remain Naruto Uzumaki, the Keeper replied. But more than you were before. The golden sight now permeates your being more fully. You exist partially in the space between realms, as the guardians of old once did. Will I be able to return to my body? To my life? A sense of gentle amusement emanated from the Keeper. Yes, though not without adjustments. Your perception of reality has been permanently altered. The golden threads will always be visible to you now, not merely when you actively call upon the power. Relief washed through Naruto, followed by lingering concern. And the enemy, is it defeated? Contained, not defeated. The Keeper corrected. The restored boundaries prevent direct incursion, but it remains beyond, seeking other avenues. This victory buys time, perhaps generations, but vigilance must be maintained. Which is why the golden Sharringan remains with me, Naruto realized. To watch for future weakening. Precisely. You are the guardian now, not merely temporarily but for as long as you live. Others will follow after you, when the time comes, but for now, the responsibility is yours. The golden threads around Naruto's consciousness began to brighten, pulling him gently back toward something he recognized as his physical existence. Your friends call you back, the Keeper observed. Their concern anchors you to the mortal realm. As Naruto felt himself being drawn back toward his body, the Keeper imparted one final message. The threads that connect you to others are your greatest strength, guardian. Nurture them, especially the brightest ones. They will sustain you through the challenges to come. The golden space faded, reality reasserting itself in increasingly insistent waves of sensation. The softness of bedding beneath him, the antiseptic smell of a hospital room. The murmur of familiar voices nearby, and one in particular, close and filled with concern. Naruto-kun, can you hear me? With tremendous effort, Naruto opened his eyes. Chapter 2 End.